Chapter 1252. 3 days later. Deep in the sea, in a trench, there was a black tortoise shell that covered a small half of the trench. At this moment, in the trench, spiritual fire was raging. Not only was Han Fei refining puppets, but he was also doing it in a different way. When he refined Overlord, it was just an idea from Mu Jia. This time, he imagined what would happen if he engraved arrays on Yu Wendao's body in the form of a tattoo. The old turtle, in the body of Gue Sanqing, stood not far away with his hands behind his back and nodded slightly. I didn't expect you to be so good at arrays at such a young age. Although this array can't give Yu Wendao the combat power of a venerable, it can increase his strength by another 20%. Han Fei grinned. I can also engrave arrays on your tortoise shell. Do you want me to engrave them for you? The old turtle said disdainfully, you don't know that the tortoise shell is an array, a kind of heaven-bestowed array. This array can prevent vitality from leaking, resist all kinds of techniques, and bear the weight of the sky. How can a few arrays you engrave be comparable to it? Han Fei frowned. Is there such a saying? He said disdainfully, then according to what you said, doesn't it mean that all creatures with shells are born with arrays? The old turtle said leisurely, this statement is not wrong. For example, do you think the shell on a crab is not an array? Every kind of creature in this world is unique. Their shells have a myriad of functions, and they grow like this after countless years of accumulation. Who knows if there are arrays among them? Hearing the old turtle's words, Han Fei, who was engraving arrays, was taken aback. What the old turtle said made sense. He couldn't help but think of the nautilus that Li Luoluo dug out in the ideal palace, which had beautiful golden lines. About an hour later, a brand new Yu Wendao appeared. However, the Yu Wendao who pretended to be calm was gone. Instead, it was a bald big shot with tattoos all over his body. Even his forehead had been engraved with array lines. The old turtle said, you pay too much attention to balance. There are too many defensive arrays and spirit-gathering arrays, but there are too few speed arrays. However, this concealment formation is still passable. Of course, it's ineffective against supremacies, but it's still effective against Dao Seekers. Han Fei said lightly, a puppet needs to be well-rounded. How can I count on it to deal with a semi-venerable? Once I lose my ability to think, even if I split a strand of my spirit, I won't be able to react fast enough compared to a half-venerable. Therefore, the purpose of his existence is only to deal with living beings below the peak of the Dao-seeking stage. Buzz, buzz, suddenly, the top of Han Fei's head shook, and the shadow of the black shell began to fade. The old turtle said, the turtle shell heaven sealing technique has a limited time. Someone will find this place soon, right? As an emperor-level powerhouse, he certainly knew about the existence of the venerable token. Now it was up to Han Fei to explain it. Han Fei said, don't mind it. Han Fei took out the venerable token and activated it. Immediately, a voice echoed in Han Fei's head, stay where you are. Another 2 hours passed. Han Fei was puzzled. Why are you so slow? The old turtle said, it's not that I'm slow, but it takes me a long time to get here without being noticed. Sure enough, after waiting for about half an hour, Han Fei suddenly found that in the trench, a large number of rattan grasses appeared, and as the number of rattan grasses soared, a red flower bud grew out. When the flower bud bloomed, Han Fei saw Jing, walking out of it. Jing naturally looked at the old turtle. After all, at her level, she certainly knew that the old turtle was not a puppet but a real sea demon. Jing, didn't pay much attention to him. The old turtle seemed to have known that she was coming. So she frowned slightly. Why did I come to this damn place? It's not close to the Shuemu heaven at all. After complaining slightly, Jing, looked at the old turtle and asked, who is this? Han Fei said, this is Gue Sanqing. He has been persuaded by me and now works for me. The old turtle rolled his eyes and put his hands behind his back, looking calm. I work for you. If it weren't for you, would I have fallen to this point? Jing, thought that Han Fei's identity was different, so she didn't think too much. With a push of her hand, a soundproof array appeared, blocking the old turtle outside. The first thing Jing said was, "Tell me first, who is my junior sister?" Han Fei blinked and said, "Don't you know?" Looking at Jing's curious little eyes, Han Fei knew that something must have happened. He said leisurely, "Well, I can't say." Jing took a deep look at Han Fei. "Really? Her Majesty also said that I can't say." "What are you talking about? You've only met Her Majesty once, and I've heard everything that you've said." Han Fei smiled faintly. "That's a secret. But I think you will know in the near future." Jing hummed for a few seconds before she gave up asking. Then she became serious. "It turns out that you can really turn into a sea demon. Even I didn't see how you did it. You didn't cultivate some special technique to become a sea demon, did you? Can you change back?" Han Fei grinned and his body quickly changed. The art of deception changed his realm and strength. At this moment, Han Fei became a beginner-level sea spirit half-mermaid. "Can you see it?" Jing frowned. "It seems I can't. This technique has hidden your true strength for 10,000 years." Han Fei smiled. "Not enough. My appearance, strength, and aura can all be changed, but my law enforcer ability and combat skills can't be changed. Combat skills are easy to solve, but the key is my law enforcer ability. This fish dragon king has the law proximity technique." As he spoke, Han Fei looked at Jing with a smile, which made Jing's teeth clench slightly. Jing glared at Han Fei. "So, you want my law proximity technique? But it does require the ability to comprehend space." Han Fei frowned. "Must I law enforcer?" In his heart, the old turtle's voice said, "Not necessarily. As long as this little girl is willing, I can still teach her." Han Fei said, "Can you do it too?" The old turtle said, "Of course I can. But I can't teach you. When you reach the king level, it will be hard for you not to know it. Because space is there. As a king, you can see through this relatively shallow power at a glance." Han Fei asked, "Then why didn't you tell me earlier?" The old turtle said, "If you want to go to the royal city, of course I will tell you. Otherwise, you will be exposed. But are you sure you want to go to the royal city with your current strength? You should know that there are kings there. Once you're exposed, both of us will be finished." Han Fei immediately understood what the old turtle meant. The reason why he didn't tell him before was probably because he was worried about this. However, he was not a fool. Even if he really went to such a dangerous place, he had to make sure that nothing would go wrong. Jing grumbled, "You're lucky." "What else?" "Her Majesty asked where you will be in the future and how to contact you." Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth and said, "Don't worry about me for a while. I'm going to find a place." "Did the Queen give you any hints?" Jing asked suspiciously again, "I really wonder if you have secretly met Her Majesty." With that, Jing threw a fish skin map to Han Fei and said, "Her Majesty gave this to you. It's all the dangerous places in the Shuemu heaven. You know how precious this sea map is, right? Her Majesty said that if she gave you this map, you would owe her 100 Dao-seeking state powerhouses and 10 venerables." Puff! Han Fei couldn't help but exclaim, "Is this a robbery?" Han Fei was dumbfounded. "I'm just a fucking junior explorer. Is it easy for me?" Seeing that Han Fei was dumbfounded, Jing snorted and said, "Don't take it for granted. Do you know how long it took Her Majesty to draw this map? Her Majesty has been drawing this map for tens of thousands of years." Jing said excitedly, "Her Majesty is so difficult. She can't go to sea and is constrained by the 2 royal cities. Do you know how the secret places, dangerous places, and forbidden areas on this map came about? They were all discovered by people. For this, more than 10 venerables died in the Shuemu heaven." Han Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Has the Life Queen been looking for water fairies for tens of thousands of years? He immediately opened the sea map and took a look. In an instant, a vast map of the sea appeared. Han Fei's pupils suddenly constricted. This composition was drawn to the boundary of the Shuemu heaven. The words, 2 million kilometers, were clearly written on it. That was the distance that the Shuemu heaven extended in the north and south directions, and there were thousands of marked points along the way. Needless to say, every point here was probably a secret realm, and this was only a small part of the sea. And from the perspective of a king, there might be many ordinary secret realms that they might not necessarily go to. Diagonally, 2 million kilometers away, the words, chaotic ocean, were written there. Han Fei couldn't help but look at Jing. What is the chaotic ocean? Jing said, I knew you would ask. The so-called chaotic ocean can also be regarded as the chaotic sea or the wall of death, a manifestation of the boundless sea. It's just that its range is not very large, usually hundreds of thousands of kilometers. It's said that it was created by the kings to separate the 36 heavens. Even venerables are very likely to die in it. Han Fei said in surprise, why did they create this? Isn't it good for the two sides to be connected? Jing looked at Han Fei as if he were an idiot. Are you stupid? Different immortal palaces have different ways of defending against enemies. If they are connected, will the Sea Demon Royal City also be connected? By then, it will be disrupted. What if multiple royal cities join forces and sneak attack a region? Han Fei's face tightened. That's true. The only thing was, they actually used the methods of various kings to open up a place where even a venerable one might die. Just how dangerous was that place? Was the boundless sea so dangerous? As if seeing through Han Fei's thoughts, Jing said, in a sense, the chaotic ocean is more dangerous than the boundless sea. The boundless sea is big and far, but the chaotic ocean is short and dangerous. It's different. Third update. Please vote. It's the college entrance examination, the road is closed. I'm home today. I wish you all the best. End of this chapter. Chapter 1253. Han Fei finally understood why the Shuemu heaven was next to the Yinyang heaven, but no one could come here. Therefore, the boundless sea that he and almost everyone in the Yinyang heaven thought was actually not the real boundless sea, but a sea area that was opened up by a strong master to block the 36 heavens. Although he was a little surprised, just who had the ability to seal up an area that was tens of millions of miles long? But what could he say if someone sealed it up for him? However, Han Fei still asked curiously, what about the sky? Can it fly? Jing said, you have so many questions. I don't know. I've never been there. Her Majesty said that the Wall of Death is horrible. Who dares to go there? Han Fei continued to observe the map and asked, have you ever been to the red spots here? Han Fei found that the area of this sea map was too large, but in fact, there weren't many marked points in it. Just like when he went to the level 3 fishery, there were thousands of marks of secret realms on Old Bai's sea map. However, the ones that were really worth exploring could only be counted as a fraction. In fact, there were only about 30,000 marked points in the vast area of the Shuemu Heavenly Sea map. And these points were divided into 3 colors. The ones near the Cloud Sea Divine Tree were mainly green, which covered an area of about 500,000 kilometers. As for the rest, there were red and black. Among them, red was the majority, accounting for almost 90%. Only the remaining 10% were black. But even so, the black spots were as large as 2,000. However, among these 2,000 black spots, 80% of them had a green mark. Jing said, the green marks indicate that they have been explored, and the red marks indicate that there are secret realms in this place, but it's impossible to verify whether these places have been explored by sea demons or not. However, the value of the red marked locations shouldn't be too high. Most of them are at the sea spirit realm, and there might be some explorers, but there shouldn't be too many. Han Fei's eyes flickered. So, black is the highest level. Jing said, black is the most dangerous. Similarly, among these black marks, the green marks are all places that have been explored by our Shuemu heaven. As for the rest, we just know, but haven't had time to explore. Among them, there must be a lot of undiscovered secret realms around the Blood Sea Divine Wood City and the Baibei Royal City. Han Fei was speechless. Hiss. So, what do you mean? Shall I go to Ong? Han Fei looked at the remaining 400 black secret realms, which were mainly distributed in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City in the west and the Baibei Royal City in the east. These two cities had one thing in common. They were very close to the chaotic Azure Sea. According to the standard on the map, the distance was probably only 500,000 to 600,000 kilometers. What did that mean? It was roughly the distance from the Ice God Gorge to the Ice God Gorge. In fact, this distance wasn't far, so the Ice God Gorge was listed as the frontline battlefield. In other words, if he wanted to get to the Baibei Royal City, he would have to cross a sea region of about 5 million kilometers to get there based on the location of the Divine Tree. On the way, Han Fei saw the unexplored black spots on the way from the Cloud Sea Divine Tree to the White Shell City. Han Fei counted 101 black spots within 1,000,000 kilometers on both sides of the straight line. Of course, Han Fei counted the black spots and didn't count the red spots, because there were too many of them. Han Fei used to think that secret realms were equivalent to treasures. If there were such a map in the Yin Yang heaven, he would probably explore them one by one with the others. Unfortunately, Han Fei didn't have the time. Even if he explored one secret realm a day, it seemed that he wouldn't be able to explore all of them. Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. His junior sister King had given him a super big problem. With the time that the Life Queen had spent in the Shuemu heaven, it was reasonable for her to find someone. Since she couldn't find him early, it was very likely that the water fairy's hiding place was somewhere in the two royal cities. Han Fei felt his blood freeze. So, not only did he have to go to the royal cities, but he also had to investigate the special secret realms in the royal cities. He might even have to find a way to sneak into the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. However, just when Han Fei thought of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, he heard Jing, blinking her eyes and saying, "Since you've become a sea demon, can you become a woman?" Han Fei said with a black face, "No, I can't." "Don't even think about it." "Ha! It seems that you have this ability." Han Fei shook his head like a rattle. "I didn't. Don't slander me. I can't become a blood demon, nor can I become a Millennium Snapper." Jing said in surprise, "You know what I want to say." "Sure enough, you must have met the Queen secretly." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "You're too dramatic. Can Her Majesty come to see me?" Seeing that Jing was still staring at him, Han Fei waved his hand and said, "I can't become a woman, not in this life. I'm a male even if I become a fox. Forget it. I feel a lot of pressure now, and the work intensity is a bit high." Seeing that Han Fei was starting to talk nonsense, Jing was speechless. Jing said, "Okay, although I don't know what kind of tacit understanding you and Her Majesty have reached. But this time, Her Majesty has really paid a lot. This time, she can only give you 3 drops of the Spring of Life, which is already the limit. She can't give you any more." Han Fei's expression changed slightly. As far as he knew, in the past few days, the Life Queen had given him 43 drops of the Spring of Life. That was the 100-year reserve of a pioneer sea state powerhouse, and she gave it to him all at once. Although nominally, he owed a lot of people, it was enough to show that the Life Queen had really paid a great price. Han Fei could guess that every time the ancient realm of the 1,000-year mountain opened, someone would probably go in with the Spring of Life. And there wouldn't be a lot of the Spring of Life. It should only be enough for the water fairy to live. Because the water fairy also made it clear that she wanted to give up her path and recultivate, which meant she had to give up her body. She would have to start from the beginning and rise from the spirit awakening state step by step. Of course, these were all Han Fei's own guesses. He had never recultivated, so he had no experience. Jing stretched out her hand, and the 3 drops of the spring of life exuded such strong vitality that he really wanted to swallow them. As long as Han Fei swallowed a drop now, he could immediately replenish his vitality and return to his peak state. However, this was not the time to use the spring of life. Han Fei waved his hand, put away the spring of life, and then said, "Close distance technique." Jing pouted, sighed, and put a jade slip into Han Fei's hand. "You people from the Yin-Yang heaven are really good at making trouble. You've only been in the Shuemu heaven for a few days, and it's already a mess. The Ice Sea realm, the Flame Sea, and the Dark War port are all yours." Han Fei couldn't help but say, "The human race has one more." Jing said, "Yu Chen is about to enter the Tao. He will enter the Tao regardless of whether you come or not. And it won't cause such a large-scale battle." Han Fei said with a smile, "Come on, it's good to have some changes. If there are no changes, it's so lifeless. You've almost forgotten your ambition." With that said, Han Fei said, "Okay. Do me a favor while you're at it." Jing couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. "What do you need?" With a flash between Han Fei's eyebrows, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, Little Fatty, and Little Gold were thrown out. Jing was slightly surprised. "You have 3 contractual spiritual beasts." Han Fei didn't care. "What's so surprising about that? I'm not a special case." With that said, Han Fei stepped on the 9-tailed mantis shrimp's melon seeds and said, "Help me throw it to the whole sea to practice." Then Han Fei pointed to Little Fatty and said, "The dark water of the Dark War port is very suitable for this guy." Then Han Fei patted Little Gold's big head. "I don't know where to throw this guy. Help me throw it to the Sky Clan to practice." Little Fatty glanced at Han Fei. "Where are you going?" Jing couldn't help but be curious. This big octopus looked so strange and spoke so coldly to his master. Han Fei said disdainfully, "I don't need you. You're too weak now." Little Fatty couldn't help but say, "Are you sure? If you don't take me, I'm afraid you'll get yourself killed." Han Fei immediately said angrily, "What are you talking about? Do you think I'll get myself killed? Your master is a king. Forget it, you'd better come with me." Han Fei thought for a moment. It seemed that his trip was indeed very dangerous. If he went to the White Shell Royal City, he would be moving under the nose of a king, and he would feel uneasy without Little Fatty. Immediately, the center of Han Fei's eyebrows flashed again, and the dog came out. "Meow, meow, am." Han Fei kicked it with his foot and pointed at the dog's nose. "Meow at me one more time and I'll sterilize you." Swoosh. The dog jumped far away. "What's wrong? Is my master in a bad mood today?" Seeing the dog's cowardice, Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. "Then you can take this guy with you. You can throw him anywhere." Jing exclaimed, "How come there is a 4th contractual spiritual beast? Is this beast?" Han Fei's lips twitched. Looking at the dog hiding next to the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, he said exasperatedly, "Sort of. I don't have time to raise them." In the end, Han Fei took out a sun moon shell. "I'm a free-range pet. There are millions of kilograms of spirit awakening fluid here. Can you ask anyone to give them a sip or something?" "Master, I can keep it for you." The dog spoke, staring at the sun moon shell in Han Fei's hand. Han Fei said, "Shut up. Every contractual spiritual beast needs to grow. It's up to you how far you can go. If I find out that any of you are lazy, unwilling to go to sea, or refuse to fight, when I come back, I will train you personally." Chi-Lu. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp and the dog both jumped behind Jing. They could feel Jing's strength. In his heart, he thought that this person was an expert after all, so his master probably wouldn't kick him again. The dog sniffed. This person smelled so good. Lick, lick. Jing had never been licked by a dog. When she saw the big tongue rubbing on her leg, she kicked the dog into the bottom of the sea. Bam! The bottom of the sea was dirty, and a big pit was kicked out. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp was so scared that he hurriedly fled. Why is this thing even fiercer than my master? Han Fei covered his face. How the hell did I end up with such a thing? Jing said, okay. Although you have a lot of contractual spiritual beasts, your strength is too weak. Your quality is good, but you need experience. Without experience, contractual spiritual beasts can never really grow up. Are you okay? If not, I'm leaving. Han Fei nodded solemnly. Okay. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1254. When the red flower buds bloomed, Jing left with the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and the others. Simp Dog and nine-tailed mantis shrimp inexplicably became comrades. They seemed to think it was good to leave their master, but Little Gold was quite reluctant to leave Han Fei. Han Fei was a little reluctant, but he knew that this was just a legend. Since his identity was there, he had to act like a legend. Just look at Punishing Saber and the others, they were all first-class powerhouses. Although Han Fei had never fought with them, he had seen Punishing Saber and Water Luster work together. The two of them were only peak-level law enforcers, but they could kill an explorer who had just reached the intermediate level. How terrifying was their strength! If the four of them fought together, Han Fei felt that he wouldn't be able to defeat them. With a thought from Han Fei, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared. Punishing Saber and the other four appeared, or rather, they should be called human beings. A knife, a ball of fire, a pangolin, a tree man, and an ice bird. Han Fei thought for a while and threw out 2 sun moon shells. The spirit awakening fluid should be useless to you. Here are 1,000,000 caddies of spiritual spring. Throw them into the painting. I'll give you 5,000 spiritual fruits. You can share them equally. I only have 2,000 left. The fire seed said, Master, we can fight for you. Now Master's strength has reached the realm of explorer. We are also explorers. In fact, we can already appear. Anyway, we can absorb spiritual energy and energy on our own. It's not a big problem. Han Fei said, not for the time being. I'm in a mess now. I won't call you out unless it's absolutely necessary. I'll give you some resources from time to help you grow. Or, under some special circumstances, I'll also call you out to gain experience, but you can't appear all the time. The tree spirit nodded. As you wish, Master. Punishing Saber and the others were taken back into the sea-quelling painting. Han Fei knew that the tree spirit and the others were his trump cards. The combat power of the 5 of them added up would definitely not be weak. They might not be a match for peak-level Dao-seeking creatures, but if the 5 of them joined forces, they might not necessarily be a match for the 5 of them. Besides, he had to tread on thin ice and be careful in the sea monster's backyard. Otherwise, with him and the old turtle, the 7 Dao-seeking creatures traveling together, it would be hard for them not to notice. The old turtle, who had witnessed the whole process, was actually quite shocked. He couldn't imagine how lucky Han Fei was to get so many precious followers in such a desolate place. Forget about the 2 sea-quelling bizarre treasures. He had never seen a drop of infinity water. After all, he was not omniscient and omnipotent. However, the drop of water seemed to be able to do everything, and its practicality was even better than that of ordinary sea-quelling bizarre treasures. Even a special creature like the 9-death soul-splitting octopus could recognize him as its master. This was not counting the other 3, which should all be legendary creatures. Moreover, although he had seen Punishing Saber and the others come out many times, there would always be a second time when all of them came out at the same time. The first time was during the tribulation. And from their conversation, the old turtle discovered that Han Fei probably had another sea-quelling bizarre treasure, a space weapon that could block a space and allow living creatures to survive. He have Infinity Super Spirit Dragon King with star. But it doesn't look like a storage space. Anyway, The old turtle was sure that Han Fei had at least one sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Not only was the old turtle speechless, but Han Fei actually had 4 sea-quelling bizarre treasure-level weapons when he had just become an explorer. Damn it! He was really shocked. Besides, these were not the most powerful ones. The most powerful thing Han Fei had was the little calabash, which was at least a divine weapon. At this moment, the old turtle felt exhausted. His luck was really good. Even when he was in the same realm, compared with Han Fei, he could only be regarded as a poor person. However, it was exactly because of this. The old turtle was lost in thought. Han Fei had so many fortuitous encounters in this damn place. Wouldn't it be amazing if he went to a bigger world? After arranging everything, Han Fei gave most of his resources to the punishing saber and the others. After all, they were equivalent to 5 explorers. If he gave them too few resources, they wouldn't be enough. But he only kept a small part of his resources, which should be enough. Now, as the old turtle said, most of the resources were useless to him. What he needed were rarer, more advanced resources that could improve his strength. Han Fei looked back at the old turtle. Old Yuan, you are the only one who knows all my secrets. Swear that you, the primitive emperor, will not reveal any of my secrets either by mouth or on paper. The old turtle's face darkened. Do you want to be my opponent? With a thought from Han Fei, Yuan Dao, who had been refined into a puppet, appeared and stared at the old turtle. Han Fei said, Old Yuan, we've known each other for a long time. There is still a long way to go in the future. Now part of your soul is free. Don't let such a trifle cause a rift between us. The old turtle was dumbfounded. He knew that Han Fei was extremely selfish. I taught you so much and gave you so many resources. But now you're suspecting me, the old turtle looked at Yuan Dao and asked. Of course, he knew that a puppet was nothing. But the problem was that Han Fei had too many trump cards. For example, the 5 guys just now were the real 5 legendary creatures. Their strength couldn't be underestimated when they cooperated with each other. Not to mention, there was also Han Fei, the biggest freak. If he didn't obey, most of his soul wouldn't have a chance to get out. Even if this body could escape, it would definitely be seriously injured. At that time, he would have to spend hundreds of years to become a king. Helpless, the old turtle sighed. You're really ruthless. Han Fei grinned. Hey! I, Han Fei, am approachable, serve the people, and do good deeds without leaving my name. Those who know me all praise me. The old turtle, seeing the old turtle swear to the Tao, Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief, put away Yuan Dao, and said with a smile, That's right. From now on, if we combine our swords, it shouldn't be a problem for us to dominate the Baibei royal city. The old turtle shook his head slightly. Okay, Yuan Dao is dead, but he went out to cultivate. So, no one will find out if he doesn't come back in a year. Although you said you would come out to cultivate, you're an influential figure in this trip to the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. People will definitely pay attention to you. You have to show up. Han Fei nodded. Don't worry. I still have to go back to the Ice God Gorge. Huh? The old turtle couldn't help but ask in surprise, why are you going back to the Ice God Gorge as a sea monster? Han Fei grinned. The dragon chi in my body is boiling, and I urgently need the soul-freezing power of the Ice God Gorge to suppress my blood chi. The old turtle, Ice God Gorge. At this moment, the seahorse Venerable was asking Yu Kailing and Lan Kaier. The fish dragon king wasn't here, so he could only ask them. As for the others, they didn't know anything at all. They didn't even know what had happened. The seahorse Venerable said, You two are the fish dragon king's subordinates. Why didn't you go with him and leave the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm? Apart from the beginning, you don't know anything about what happened in the Ancient Realm. How can you be his subordinates? Lan Shui lowered her head. Yu Kailing pursed her lips. Venerable, the Dragon King only brought Lord Sanqing with him when he came back. He left in a hurry and didn't inform us at all. The seahorse venerable squinted and said, "You Kaling, you've been to the royal city once. Tell me, what do you think about what happened in the Thousand Mountain ancient realm?" The fish dragon king went on a killing spree in the end. It's said that he killed more than 100 people many times. Is that true? Yu Kaling said, "Venerable, we don't know that either, but we heard it from the blood demon." But at the exit of the ancient realm, Dragon King, I still remember the scene of one person stopping more than 500 people. The seahorse venerable pondered for a long time. The fish dragon king could do that? 1 against 500? Are you sure you're not bragging? He had been through the peak of the sea spirit realm. Although he wasn't at the top, he was still a top heavenly talent. But 1 against 500? It was already difficult for him to take on 50 blood demons by himself. The scene of the ichthyosaur king charging at the 500 blood demons alone didn't seem right. As a matter of fact, he had asked them to retreat first, but in the end, all of them had been fucking killed halfway. It was strange that the 3 venerables didn't find him. The seahorse venerable shouted in a low voice, "Send someone to search for him. A living person can't disappear without a trace." When Yu Kaling was about to take the order, someone suddenly said, "Venerable, the fish dragon king and Gue Sanqing are back. They have passed the ice mountain city and are on their way to the ice god gorge." The seahorse venerable was taken aback. Oh. They came back by themselves. About half a day later, on the way to the ice god gorge, Han Fei murmured, "This close distance technique is interesting. It turns out to be a space folding technique. How amazing." The old turtle smiled. "That's nothing. When you become a real king, you can cross 1,000,000 kilometers in one step if you walk the path of space. What's more, if you're good at void teleportation, it's very possible for you to cross the entire sea in the blink of an eye." Han Fei was surprised. "So fast?" The old turtle said disdainfully, "The speed of traveling is different from the speed of actual battle. But it's all about the great path. You can't understand it now." Han Fei, second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1255. Han Fei openly returned to the Ice God Gorge. The moment he stepped into the Ice God Gorge, many senses immediately scanned over him. As soon as he entered the gorge, the seahorse venerable said to him, "Come to the arena." Of course, Han Fei knew it was the venerable's voice transmission. As Han Fei swam past, many people were watching him at the entrance of the cave abodes. Most of them were peak stage sea spirits. Most of them weren't qualified to go to the Thousand Mountain ancient realm because they weren't strong enough. They were just ordinary peak stage sea spirits. However, in private, rumors about Han Fei had spread in the past few days. People even said that he could defeat 1,000 people. Someone said, "Are the experts from the royal city so powerful? I heard he defeated the top talents of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City alone." Someone who saw Han Fei walk out of the Thousand Mountain ancient realm with fire, said seriously, "What do you think? You don't even know what happened at that time. Undead creatures covered the sky and covered the earth. Everyone was running, but the fish dragon king didn't want to leave at all. It's said that he even charged into the insect tide." Someone sighed. "Otherwise, he would have become a talent of the royal city. And he's ranked 10th on the prodigy roll. If he's ranked first, we can't even imagine how strong he is." But someone else said, "But he's too ruthless. They're all talents of the royal city, but I heard none of them came out. One of them was killed on the spot in the Thousand Mountain ancient realm." Many people's expressions changed. "Shut up. Is this something you can discuss? The internal fights between experts will only be more fierce than we think." Under the gazes and discussions of countless people, Han Fei swam directly to the arena with an arrogant expression. He didn't care about anything else. In the arena, Han Fei saw Yu Kaling and Lan Shuer standing respectfully on the side. On the high platform, the seahorse venerable looked at the fish dragon king and said, "Why is the blood qi in your body moving? Your demonic qi seems to be a bit out of control." Are you going to undergo a tribulation? Han Fei said, Sir, the Dragon King had some enlightenment during the trip to the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. Because of the restlessness in his bloodline, he left the team and found a secret realm to stabilize his cultivation for a few days. The seahorse venerable looked straight at Han Fei. Looks like the effect isn't very good. I haven't been able to suppress it for a few days. Han Fei smiled casually. The Dragon King's bloodline has changed. I feel that the level of my demonic heritage may be improved. The venerable seahorse was taken aback. Oh. Do you mean within the 8th level or the 9th level? Han Fei curled his lips inadvertently as if he was smiling bitterly. He said, Level 9 is still too difficult. If I can make a breakthrough this time, I may reach level 8, high quality. The venerable seahorse's eyes lit up. If that's the case, this can be considered a joyous occasion. Since that's the case, why not come back after you've broken through? Han Fei smiled lightly. It's mainly to prevent the venerables from worrying too much. Also, because my blood and chi are in a frenzy, I need to make use of the cold energy of the Ice God Gorge. The venerable seahorse nodded. Then you should be clear about it. By the way, was the blood demon you killed at the end the one who ambushed you? Han Fei shook his head. No, it must be someone else. That person's strength is probably on par with mine, or perhaps even more mysterious. Otherwise, I would have killed him long ago. The venerable seahorse nodded slightly. Got it. These two are your subordinates. You can take them away yourself. Han Fei turned his head and glanced at the two of them. His eyes were cold, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Wait for my return. After that, Han Fei ignored the two of them, turned around, left the arena, and swam directly to the abyss outside the Ice God Gorge. From beginning to end, the old turtle didn't say a word and just followed Han Fei. As soon as Han Fei left the arena, Lan Shui, and Yu Keiling also left. Compared to the Fish Dragon King, the venerable seahorse actually valued these two people more. Next to the venerable seahorse, another half-mermaid venerable suddenly appeared and said indifferently, What do you think? The venerable seahorse said, After all, the Fish Dragon King is originally from the royal city. Now that his demonic heritage has changed, maybe his ranking will change in the future. Also, the Fish Dragon King must have obtained a lot of opportunities in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm this time. It's not a bad idea to let these two follow him. The half-mermaid venerable said, Do you really think the Fish Dragon King is as arrogant and conceited as he looks? The venerable seahorse tilted its head. What do you mean? The half-mermaid venerable said, I don't know what's going on either. I always feel that under the conceited appearance of the Fish Dragon King, there's a deep heart hidden. Think about it. Yu Hong is dead, Shui Hong Yan is dead, and a total of 3 people from the royal city came. The 2 smart ones died, but the conceited Fish Dragon King survived. The venerable seahorse frowned slightly. That's true. But among the 3, the Fish Dragon King is the strongest. Maybe it's as you said, but what does it have to do with us? No matter how talented this guy is, he's not worthy of our attention before he enters the Tao. The half-mermaid venerable nodded slightly. Indeed. Not to mention that the Fish Dragon King was only in the top 10 of the prodigy list, even if he was ranked first, it didn't mean much in the sea spirit realm. The abyssal chasm could also be called a trench. In the ocean, due to the movement of the Earth's crust, trenches were actually very common, but some were deep and some were shallow. And the depth of the Ice God Gorge was not something that ordinary people could explore. Last time, Han Fei dived 10,000 meters as Yu Hanjia and was watched by Yu Wendao all the way. This time, Han Fei dived 10,000 meters and descended quickly, with the old turtle following closely behind. The old turtle said, I still can't explore. This body limits me. Han Fei was speechless. Come on, if you can't perceive it, then you can't perceive it. What's there to brag about? I can't perceive it either. What did I say? The old turtle, Han Fei indeed couldn't perceive it, but he didn't think it was a bad thing. The abyss that even the old turtle couldn't perceive to the bottom was certainly not something that could be seen by ordinary venerables. This time, when Han Fei and the old turtle dived to about 15,000 meters, the old turtle reminded him, "You need to protect yourself with demonic energy. At this distance, people can see you clearly." Han Fei nodded, and the ice crystals on his body suddenly shattered at this moment, and billowing demonic energy lingered around him. At this depth, Han Fei couldn't be naughty anymore, because both his body and soul seemed to have begun to stiffen slightly. In the Ice God Gorge, the three venerables were watching Han Fei, who was diving in the crack at the moment. Among them, the newest venerable turtle said, he didn't use demonic energy to protect himself until he reached 15,000 meters. This kid is really arrogant. But he is only halfway there. Let's see how much deeper he can go. The seahorse venerable said, it shouldn't be a problem for him to reach a depth of 25,000 meters. But if he continues to go down, the fish dragon king might die, but Gui Sanqing might not be able to go down. The half-mermaid venerable grinned and said, this has nothing to do with the realm, but the strength of the soul. After all, Gui Sanqing is just a servant. Even if he is already half a venerable, 30,000 meters should be his limit. That layer of frost mist isn't something that just anyone can walk through. The seahorse venerable said, however, didn't this kid say that he wanted to cultivate here? Is he still interested in the secret under the Ice God Gorge? Below, when Han Fei reached 2,000 meters, he found that his demonic energy couldn't resist the invasion of the cold air. And there seemed to be something in the sea that was stimulating his soul. When he dived to 25,000 meters, Han Fei stopped. He was almost frozen into an ice block. He couldn't help but ignite demonic fire. His blood surged and almost doubled in speed in his body. Han Fei asked, Old Turtle, what the hell is this place? Haven't you sensed anything yet? The old tortoise had deliberately frozen himself into a block of ice. The old tortoise said, there is a frosty fog below. This emperor's perception is blocked by that fog. I almost passed through it. Han Fei didn't believe it. How much do you mean almost? The old turtle frowned. If my soul is not damaged and my Tao is not gone, I can see through this place at a glance. Han Fei said impatiently, okay, stop bragging. It's not a shame if you can't see through it. It's really fucking cold here. My blood and chi are almost frozen. The old turtle sneered. Are you kidding me? With my great Tao as the foundation, your meridians are no longer the meridians of mortals. In addition to the half-success of the golden body, walking directly into the fog won't do you any harm. You're just purely cold now. Han Fei smiled. But I can't go down directly. How strong is the fish dragon king? If he could pass through the mist directly, I'm afraid he would have done this long ago. Let me stay here for a few days. So, looking from above, Han Fei and the old turtle both stopped about 25,000 meters deep in the strait. The old turtle let himself be frozen into a big ice block. And Han Fei's body was smoking, and billowing demonic energy was crazily drawn into his body from all directions. He was practicing the demon god scripture. Before, Han Fei had never seriously practiced the sea demon cultivation method. However, now that he was practicing the sea demon cultivation method, he found that there seemed to be a power slowly improving his physique. The old turtle asked, the sea demon cultivation method you are practicing seems to be quite advanced, right? Han Fei thought to himself, of course, this method is a divine connecting technique, almost like a Tao. Of course, Han Fei didn't bother to explain, so he said casually, I picked it up. The third chapter. I've been thinking about the plot recently. Keep updating and try to make more exciting arrangements in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 1256. Han Fei should have discovered that whether he was a human being or a sea demon, his body was his. So, no matter what form he used. As long as he could still cultivate, his ultimate strength would be synchronized with his body. Therefore, when Han Fei cultivated the demon god scripture, he sucked up a large number of demonic stones and forged the universe in one go. It was very difficult to wash repeatedly in 3 days, but Han Fei's strength improved a little. Of course, this kind of rapid improvement would take time to stabilize in the future. But Han Fei didn't care. He wanted to quickly raise his strength to the peak level explorer level. Then, he could spend a few years slowly grinding it away. In this way, at least he could use more combat power in advance. However, under the nose of the enemy, Han Fei couldn't make any breakthrough. Otherwise, wouldn't he be exposed? If he made another breakthrough, he would have to go through a tribulation. This was something that even a fool would know. Therefore, even if he consumed a large number of demonic stones, Han Fei still didn't reach level 71. As if adapting to this depth, Han Fei suddenly said to the old turtle, "I'm going to continue diving down until I reach the top of the mist you mentioned." The old turtle said, "Gue Sanqing's body won't go down with you. Gue Sanqing's body and soul are not enough to support him to explore this secret realm. However, this empress can roughly guess that there should be some extremely cold object below. Unless it's a special technique, ordinary people can't afford to use this kind of cold power at all, even venerables." Han Fei thought to himself, "I won't use it myself. I don't have such a technique. If it weren't for the reaction of Little Black and Little White, maybe I wouldn't have come to this ice god gorge." Han Fei seemed to take a breath and directly sank more than 5,000 meters in one go. At this time, ice was constantly condensing around him, and then it was constantly broken by Han Fei's surging blood. At this time, Han Fei bared his teeth and seemed to be trembling all over. However, this was actually all an act. No matter whether anyone could see it or not, he didn't need to show off too much. At this time, a deep dragon roar came from his throat. Apart from that, there was also a faint demonic chi dragon shadow surrounding his body. The moment the dragon's shadow appeared, the 3 venerables of the ice god gorge couldn't help but cast their gazes over. Is there a change in his Dragon King bloodline? That's right. It's obvious that something strange has happened. It looks like he did come across a fortuitous encounter in the Thousand Mountains ancient realm. Perhaps Yu Hong was actually killed by him as well. Perhaps he's hiding many things from us. Han Fei knew that a venerable's perception had scanned him. However, he did not panic at all. At the end of the day, it seemed possible to disguise the spirit concentration art as the demon concentration art. Of course, this was to prevent the demonic energy dragon's shadow that he had deliberately created from being exposed. Han Fei deliberately made an illusion with the void lines and the water vein technique. The Venerable One was not a god, so it was impossible for him to take care of everything. Even the kings, or the characters above the kings, often made mistakes, like when he fooled Chen Huangdian. So what if he was a king? In front of absolute acting skills, everything was useless. Besides, Han Fei was now a sea demon himself. Although he was not the fish dragon king, he was a real sea demon. After diving for 30,000 meters, Han Fei finally saw the white smoke that looked like a cloud. This environment reminded Han Fei of the mirror of icy salt that he had been to in the level 3 fishery. After acting for 3 days and improving himself, he was only one step away from breaking through to level 71. Han Fei certainly wouldn't let go of this opportunity. Next, I'll improve as much as I can. Of course, Han Fei was not in a hurry to cultivate. When he was halfway into the white mist, he really felt extremely cold this time, and even his soul had begun to feel slightly numb. This time, Han Fei really started to light a fire for himself. The demonic energy flames on his body were burning fiercely. Fortunately, he was the one who came down. If it was someone else, he might not have been able to hold on. At the very least, the amount of demonic chi he could store in his body was definitely not enough. Unless that person was a Tao-seeking state demon. But even if it was a Tao-seeking state demon, it still depended on its level. The speed of absorbing demonic energy and spiritual energy from the void was also different from that of a peak-level Tao-seeking state demon. Han Fei didn't care about this. There was still 1 billion points of spiritual energy in Forge the Universe. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't finish it anyway. So, in the white mist, a fiery red area of at least 100 meters appeared. Han Fei was still diving quickly. He had never encountered a deep-sea area with a depth of tens of thousands of meters. The abyssal chasm was still 3,000 meters from the surface of the sea, and he had dived more than 3,000 meters in this cloud. After a rough estimation, it was almost 40,000 meters. At this moment, Han Fei found that in this mist, there were many colorful creatures. In front of Han Fei, there was a huge fish with a body like a horse lantern. Suddenly, it released a terrifying electric current on him. With Han Fei's physique, he certainly wouldn't be afraid of a mere electric current. Han Fei even felt that this electric current was a special kind of cold power, which was trying to attack his soul. However, after staring at it for a long time, Han Fei was quite surprised. If the information hadn't popped up, he wouldn't have known what it was that shocked him. Because that thing was completely transparent. A string of information popped up in his eyes. Name: a transparent algae eel. Introduction: a special fish in the deep sea. Its body is as thin as algae and transparent. When it swims, its forehead and the edge of its body will emit colorful light. Transparent algae eels are good at paralyzing electric currents and strangling. Level A 69. Quality: exotic, mutated, spiritual energy greater than 59,998 points. Effect: long-term consumption can significantly increase your vitality and improve your physique. Collectible: a transparent frontal bone, glowing meridians. Remarks: when the transparent algae eel uses strangulation, it will stick close to its prey and kill them with its terrifying strength. For reference, willow leaf eel. When Han Fei saw the message clearly, he already had a bad feeling about it. He felt that he was covered by something like a film when he wasn't paying attention. As for the electric current just now, he didn't feel anything. Ha! A creature that's thinner than seaweed leaves wants to strangle me. With a thought from Han Fei, the infinity water darted out from his body in all directions. After only one attack, the transparent algae eel was riddled with holes. However, the vitality of the transparent algae eel was almost as strong as that of jellyfish. Its body was riddled with holes, but it wasn't slow at all. It seemed to have realized that the enemy was too strong and was trying to slip away. Han Fei grabbed it with his hand and pinched it. Then, Han Fei discovered, to his surprise, that the creature was more than 50 meters long and 8 meters wide. Except for the skull, there was only one glowing meridian left. Chilla. Han Fei cut the transparent algae eel into halves and threw it into Forge the Universe. This thing is really tough, it must be very chewy. After killing the transparent algae eel, Han Fei found a lot of creatures nearby. For example, at this moment, he encountered a group of white prawns that were half a meter long and had only one horn on their head. This kind of prawn was even more peculiar. They looked like a single conical pillar, and their eyes were on the big thorn. As for the large thorn, it pierced from the forehead to the tail, like a truck carrying a missile on its back. This kind of prawn was good at stabbing. Name: a thorny blood prawn. Introduction: deep sea thorny prawn. Level 68. Equality: rare, spiritual energy greater than 9,583 points. Effect: long-term consumption can increase ice resistance. Collectible: a thorny spear. Swish. 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 Han Fei saw water ripples in front of him, and many thorns stabbed at him. Because there were so many of them, Han Fei didn't bother to attack them one by one. Huh! A roar burst out like a dragon's roar. As Han Fei roared, at least hundreds of thorny blood prawns in front of him were shocked to death. In comparison, they were just rare creatures. Even if Han Fei stood still, they wouldn't be able to stab him, let alone hurt him. In Forge the Universe. The real Fish Dragon King, who had long been dying, was dumbfounded when he saw Yuandao also come in. At least he was still alive, but Yuandao seemed to have become a statue. He was trapped in the array by Han Fei, watching Han Fei throw things into this vast space every day or take things from here. When the Fish Dragon King saw Han Fei's spiritual spring, it was tens of thousands of kilograms or even millions of kilograms. It didn't want to live at all. It was a huge blow to it. In the past few days, he had seen strange marine creatures being thrown in one after another. Sometimes it was a turtle, sometimes a big fish, sometimes a big snail, sea cucumber, sea urchin, crab, lobster. In short, there were many kinds of them. Now, a transparent thing was thrown in for no reason, as well as hundreds of strange prawns. He knew this kind of prawn. This was the unique thorny blood prawn of the Ice God Gorge. In other words, Han Fei was now in the Ice God Gorge. The Fish Dragon King roared, "Han Fei, let me out, Han Fei, bam." Han Fei's voice reverberated in the air, "Shut up. Buzz. You're almost as loud as those bugs. If you yell again, I'll chop you up." The Fish Dragon King said, "I know you are in the Ice God Gorge. You are exploring the secrets of the Ice God Gorge. I know the secrets of this place. I can trade with you. In the outside world." Han Fei curled his lips and said contemptuously, "The secrets of the Ice God Gorge are not enough. If you want to survive, you can trade the secrets of the royal city." The information reading of the void lines was not omnipotent. It couldn't read all the memories. Han Fei could only read most of the relatively shallow memories. Many deep memories were usually hidden by the brain because they were considered very important. Of course, no matter what the Fish Dragon King said, Han Fei would never let him go. Chapter 1257. Seeing Han Fei's indifferent attitude, the Fish Dragon King immediately roared, "Han Fei, you're despicable and shameless. Fight me fair and square if you dare." Han Fei said leisurely, "You either tell me the secret of the Ice God Gorge or shut up. Otherwise, I don't mind killing you now." The Fish Dragon King laughed. "Han Fei, you dare not kill me. My life tablet can't be broken. Once my life tablet is broken, you can no longer pretend to be me." Swish. Yuan Dao stepped in front of the Fish Dragon King. However, Yuan Dao said, "I don't have to pretend to be you. But, Fish Dragon King, you have never been my opponent. Your life is dispensable to me. However, if you can help me do one thing in the future, not only will I let you go, but I will also repair your injuries and you may return to your peak again." The Fish Dragon King shivered. "Yuan Dao. That's it? I've become a puppet." However, the Fish Dragon King suddenly perked up. "Is there a chance that I won't die?" For such a heavenly talent, he knew very well how strong he was and how strong others were. Maybe he was no match for Han Fei, but not everyone was like Han Fei. Han Fei had completely subverted his understanding of the world. This was a ruthless and ferocious person. Not only that, this person was extremely dangerous. He could sneak into the Ice God Gorge just by imitating him. To be able to hide it from Gue Sanqing, this was a remarkable thing. Being defeated by a person like Han Fei might become his inner demon, but this inner demon would not be an obstacle to him. The Fish Dragon King said, "Tell me, what's the matter?" Yuan Dao put on a smile. "That's simple. In the future, I will go to the royal city. At that time, I will naturally meet all kinds of people. You need to help me recognize them." The Fish Dragon King said in surprise, "So simple?" Han Fei sneered. "What are you thinking? What's the big deal? This is just the basis of our cooperation. There are some things that I didn't know until I got your royal city." The Fish Dragon King looked complicated. "You want me to help you deal with the royal city? That's impossible. No matter how strong you are, you have just passed the tribulation. You can't deal with the royal city. TSK. Who told you that I'm going to attack the White Shell capital city?" The Ichthyosaur King was confused. "Then what are you going to do?" "I'm looking for a secret realm. As long as we find this mystic realm, it doesn't matter if I kill you or not." The Fish Dragon King asked, "What if we can't find it?" "Ha! Can't find it? You can pray I don't find it. However, if I can't find you in Baibei Royal City, it will be time for you to be of use. So, don't worry, you still have value. So tell me the secret of the Ice God Gorge first. Han Fei said, Fish Dragon King, only when a person is useful can he have a chance to live. The premise is that you have to always let me see your value. You are a proud son of heaven. Even if you do not have the potential to become a king, you have the potential to enter the Tao. You must not make a mistake. Say it. Han Fei's voice seemed to be bewitching, which stunned the Fish Dragon King. Hearing what Han Fei said, a glimmer of hope was ignited in the Fish Dragon King's heart. It couldn't be helped. In boundless despair, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, it would become a life-saving straw. Therefore, the Fish Dragon King quickly made a decision. He knew very well that no matter where it was a place where the strong preyed on the weak. Only survival was the only truth. Immediately, the Fish Dragon King said, I'll say it. When the Fish Dragon King said these two words, the old turtle's voice buzzed, Son of a bitch, this kid has no backbone at all. He will never enter the Tao in this life. Han Fei said with a smile, I don't care if he can enter the Tao or not. I didn't lie to him. Maybe I can really restore him. The old turtle sneered. You just don't want to go to the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. Han Fei grinned. Smart. In Forge the Universe, the Fish Dragon King said, the secret under the Ice God Gorge is not undiscovered, but no one can use it. Oh. Why do you say so? Han Fei also felt that the sea demons had already made their nests in the Ice God Gorge, and there were venerables guarding it all year round. If there were really great benefits under the Ice God Gorge, even if the venerables couldn't use it, the kings could, right? After all, there were kings in the Baibei royal city. However, the Ice God Gorge was still the Ice God Gorge. It seemed that except for the great demons above the Tao-seeking state, basically no one knew what was under the Ice God Gorge. Even the Tao-seeking state was useless. At least, Gue Sanqing, who was possessed by the old turtle, couldn't come down at this moment. The Fish Dragon King said, there is a kind of power under the Ice God Gorge, a kind of power of extreme yin and extreme cold. It is said that all those who covet this power are frozen to pieces, without exception. There was once a venerable who cultivated the Tao of extreme cold, but when she tried to subdue this power of extreme cold, half of her body was broken. It took her 100 years to recover. Huh? Suddenly, the old turtle exclaimed, if that's the case, it's interesting. There is indeed such a power of extreme cold in this world. This is a natural spiritual treasure. Oh no, to be precise, it should be a kind of peerless treasure. In the end, it was abandoned here, and no one cares about it. Han Fei said quickly, peerless treasures. What do you mean? However, he heard the old turtle say, in this world, apart from the great Tao, there are countless treasures of heaven and earth. There is nothing you can't think of that you can't find in this world. If it was really as the Ichthyosaur King had described, and there really was such a precious material below. In that case, the only possibility was that the kings didn't know what they had encountered at all. That's why they allowed this thing to be stored in this place. They weren't afraid that it would be robbed. Han Fei gasped. Is it really so precious? The old turtle snorted. Why would I lie to you? How big is the world you've only seen? Do you know how big the outside world is? I've already said that the area you're in is very barren. You should be happy that you've come across such a rare treasure. Oh, that's not right, you brat shouldn't be able to collect it either. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, what kind of person can collect such things? The old turtle couldn't help but say, first of all, if it's a rare treasure material, not even a venerable one can touch it. It's at least as precious as a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. However, since the king knows about this thing and still left it here, maybe. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Maybe he can't pick it up either. The old turtle, Han Fei was stunned. Damn it. If I can't even pick it up, why should I go down there? The old turtle sneered. Can't you see it if you can't pick it up? Why wouldn't you? You have my great Tao as your meridians. Are you afraid of this little bit of coldness? Han Fei was speechless. Hey, hey, hey. Stop saying that this is your great Tao. Now, it is my meridians. In Forge the Universe, the Ichthyosaur King said, Han Fei, I saved your life. If you are still a heavenly talent, give me a promise. Yuan Dao was silent for a moment and said, your so-called secret is meaningless to me. If it's really so dangerous, you definitely won't tell me. Otherwise, if I die, you can drag me down with you. However, you told me, which means that you know I won't be fooled and I won't take that power directly. Hee, do you think you saved my life by telling me about the southeast? Did you get hit in the head by an ironhead fish? The Ichthyosaur King, Han Fei said lazily, just be quiet. Next time, don't try to play this little trick on me. Suddenly, the old turtle said, boy, is your soul manipulating technique incomplete? Han Fei was confused. What do you mean? The old turtle said, you said you know the soul manipulating technique, but the soul manipulating technique can read memories. Why did you make a deal with him? Why didn't you just look at him? Or were you testing him? If he lied, you would kill him. Han Fei was stunned for a moment. He had never thought so much. The soul manipulating technique was memory reading. Wasn't my void lines also memory reading? Han Fei said, isn't memory reading just part of the memory? The old turtle laughed. Are you kidding me? You can read all its memories with the soul manipulating technique, but the side effects may be a bit big. Han Fei was shocked. What? The soul manipulating technique was different from the void lines memories? Han Fei couldn't help but take a breath. Wasn't it a bit exaggerated to read all its memories? But Han Fei keenly grasped one thing, which was that the side effects of this technique were a bit big. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, tell me what the side effects are first. The old turtle said, it seems that what you have mastered is not the soul manipulating technique, but a kind of memory peeping technique. I thought you had mastered the soul manipulating technique. Mocking Han Fei, the old turtle said, in fact, it's not too bad. There are not many side effects. If the target is stronger than the soul manipulator, it will easily backfire, so you can't perform the soul manipulating on the target whose realm is higher than yours. Han Fei thought to himself that it was not a big deal. His soul power was very strong and it was more than enough to deal with ordinary people. The old turtle continued, there's also the soul manipulating technique to read memories. It's easy to be attacked by the soul catcher's memories and affect your own soul's memories. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Affect my memory? Han Fei's face changed a few times. Anything else? The old turtle said leisurely, the soul manipulating technique can easily cause the target's soul to be confused and become stupid. That's all. Han Fei didn't know what to do with him if the soul manipulator became an idiot. But the second one didn't seem very friendly. But he hadn't gone to the White Shell Royal City yet. The soul manipulating technique could wait, but he didn't want to be misled by the old turtle. Han Fei said calmly, let's explore this place first. After Han Fei broke through this layer of fog, he finally landed on this large reef. Kacha! But the moment Han Fei appeared, he grunted and his head seemed to be stabbed heavily. His body was directly frozen into a big ice block. Kacha! Bam! The ice was shattered, and Han Fei saw that the ice quickly condensed around him. In less than 2 seconds, he was frozen into a block of ice again. Han Fei. Han Fei was speechless. The demonic fire was still burning on his body. But now, the ice sculpture was on fire, which was as weird as it could be. The old turtle sneered. The path to the invincible realm. The path to the invincible realm is not only invincible in fighting, but also invincible in defense. With a thought, Han Fei shattered the ice block again and let the golden giant phantom shroud him. Sure enough, no ice came over this time. He finally blocked the power of the ice. At this moment, Han Fei's eyebrows suddenly twitched. Han Fei immediately thought of something. In such a cold situation, could Little Black and Little White bear it with their current strength? However, since Little Black and Little White had taken the initiative to come out, it seemed that this place was deeply attractive to them. With a flash between Han Fei's eyebrows, Little Black and Little White jumped out. However, as soon as the two little fish circled around Han Fei, Little Black suddenly said, "Dad, I'm cold. I don't want to stay outside." Huh? Han Fei was stunned for a moment and quickly threw Little Black into Forge the Universe. Suddenly, Han Fei seemed to understand something. He couldn't help but look at Little White. "Daughter, so you've been thinking of coming out?" Chapter 1258. It was not the first time that the old turtle had seen Little Black and Little White. So, he was not surprised at this moment. However, when Little White jumped out 100 meters with a swish, both Han Fei and the old turtle were stunned, and they said almost at the same time, "Huh? Daughter, aren't you cold?" "Huh? Little White can withstand such a degree of cold power." Little White said, "Dad, there's a treasure." Han Fei nodded and thought to himself, "I know there's a treasure. If there's no treasure, why should I come down? The question is, can I afford this treasure?" Han Fei immediately said, "Daughter, don't mess around. The treasure is right there. Don't worry. Let's see what the treasure looks like first." Little White had always been good at treasure hunting. With Little White leading the way, Han Fei wouldn't be wrong. However, in this extremely cold place, Han Fei found that his perception couldn't even extend beyond a range of 5 meters. Because as soon as his perception went out, it was frozen and shattered. "I'm asking you, are you angry?" Because he couldn't perceive anything, Han Fei naturally couldn't see any more creatures, so he could only chase Little White all the way. About 10 minutes later, Han Fei only felt that the surroundings were getting colder and colder. Even around the invincible will, frost crystals appeared. Therefore, Han Fei could only compress the invincible will to the surface of his body. This made Han Fei look like a golden man. Han Fei took a slight breath. "Fortunately, I'm a body-refining cultivator. Otherwise, I'm afraid I can't come in." The old turtle was more certain at this moment. "There must be an ice-type treasure here. Your physique is no worse than that of a peak-stage Tao-seeking cultivator, and it has even reached the semi-venerable realm. Plus your invincible will and unlimited spiritual fire, your resistance is already comparable to that of a venerable. Even so, it's still not enough. It can be seen that that thing is not something that can be touched by those below the venerable realm." Han Fei felt that every time he moved forward, the demonic energy burned more fiercely. He probably understood why those venerables just stared at him and were not worried at all that he would cause trouble under the Ice God Gorge. They probably didn't even think that they would be able to reach this place. Han Fei couldn't help but smile and chased Little White for another 10 minutes. Just when he felt like he couldn't hold on any longer, he saw a huge lump of ice glowing with a bluish-silver light. When he saw the lump of ice, Han Fei felt his soul shiver. Han Fei trembled and shouted, "Daughter, is this your opportunity?" In any case, Han Fei didn't think he could enjoy such an opportunity. Although Xiao Bai seemed to be fine, Han Fei still felt that he should observe it in case of any accidents. Seeing that Little White was looking at him, Han Fei took out a dragon burial rod unhurriedly. With a wave of his hand, the fishing line shot out in the blink of an eye. However, a horrifying scene took place. The hook and even the fishing line were frozen at a visible speed. That wasn't all. In less than a breath's time, the ice had already extended to the dragon burial rod. At this moment, the medium divine grade sword was frozen solid. With a thought, surging spiritual energy rushed out, trying to shatter the ice in one fell swoop. However, Han Fei felt that the demonic energy was blocked and could no longer be transmitted from the fishing rod. Han Fei's eyes became fierce and he gritted his teeth. Is the ice so solid? As Han Fei transmitted a huge amount of spiritual energy, the demonic energy on the dragon burial rod surged and then trembled violently. Bam! The violent explosion directly shook Han Fei away. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Is the dragon burial rod broken? No matter what, it was still a mid-level divine weapon. However, it was able to bear such a small amount of spiritual chi, yet it was broken? The old turtle said, "It's not that the weapon is bad, but that the power directly froze the structure of the weapon. Therefore, under the conduction of a large amount of spiritual energy, a spiritual energy explosion occurred because of the blockage of spiritual energy. In short, your weapon is ruined." Han Fei thought to himself, "Of course, I can't see it myself. Do you need to tell me?" And in the explosion, Han Fei saw that Little White, at some point, had already come to the side of the big lump of ice. Han Fei's heart slightly tightened, and at the same time, he was surprised. Little White is only level 59. How can she resist such a terrifying freezing power? The old turtle exclaimed in surprise, "I've never seen your spiritual beast before. However, even if it has the coldest body, its level is too low. How can it resist such a strong freezing power?" However, at this moment, not far away, Han Fei suddenly saw the big lump of ice tremble slightly, and there seemed to be a blue gas flowing into Little White's body. Han Fei couldn't help but smile. "It shows that my spiritual beast is talented and has infinite potential. Look, it can easily resist the power that I can't resist." "Ha!" The old turtle sneered. "Although I don't know your spiritual beast, there is one thing I know. Little White Fish, I'm sure that you didn't use your own strength to resist the power of ice. It has some kind of Taoist aura. I suspect that it has mastered the way of extreme cold." Han Fei froze for a moment and then smiled. "Are you kidding me? How can it have Taoist aura when it hasn't even entered the way?" The old turtle pondered for a moment. "It's not impossible. This world is far bigger than you think. You think that it's impossible, but some creatures can do it the moment they are born. Some creatures are born with connate Taoist aptitudes. If you insist on comparing yourself to different living beings, you'll die of anger." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Connate Taoist aptitude? For some reason, Han Fei suddenly thought of the time dragon carp. It seemed that little time was only level 1, right? But at that time, wasn't it already able to affect space and time? Little Black and Little White were both mysterious creatures. Why couldn't they have connate Taoist aptitudes? After all, if he used the supreme yin-yang wheel, there seemed to be a Taoist aura. Thinking of this, Han Fei felt that Little Black and Little White were even more extraordinary. He said, "Girl, come on, eat up this lump of ice for me." Little White didn't respond, but Han Fei's face suddenly changed slightly as if danger was coming. Without the old turtle's reminder, Han Fei discovered that at the bottom of the water, a tricolored light suddenly appeared. Because it was no longer in the mist, Han Fei could see it very clearly. It turned out to be 3 identical prawns of different colors, each of which was about 7 or 8 meters long. The old turtle said, "It's a tri-light blazing prawn. No wonder there are no other creatures around. It turns out that this thing is here. Han Fei, boy, don't let your guard down with the art of invincibility. Go down and kill them. Remember, find a way to kill them at the same time." Because the distance was not very close, Han Fei hadn't been able to read the information of the tri-light blazing prawns, so he could only listen to the old turtle. However, these 3 big prawns were obviously targeting Little White. How could Han Fei tolerate this? "My daughter is eating. How dare you destroy her?" Han Fei took a step forward, pointed his finger, and the infinity water erupted first, rolling like a long dragon. After taking this step, Han Fei didn't feel colder but warmer. The 3 big prawns seemed to be slightly surprised by Han Fei's sudden arrival. At this moment, 3 rays of light shot straight at Han Fei. They were milky white, dark blue, and fiery red. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name a tri-light blazing prawn. Introduction: a legendary creature with 3 prawns in one body. One has the tri-light divine water, one can dive into the sea of fire, and one can dive into the extreme cold. The 3 lights are red, blue, and white. The white light can break armor, the red light can kill enemies, and the blue light can invade souls. When the 3 of them work together, it's even more powerful. Level S76 Law Enforcement A Trilite Divine Body Quality Legendary Spiritual Energy greater than 133,664 points. Effect when practicing the ice and fire breathing technique, the effect is doubled, and the user can resist ice and fire. Collectible A Cold Crystal, Fire Seed, Dow Thorn, Trilite Extraordinary Meridian. Note, unless the 3 prawns are killed at the same time, if one is not killed, the other 2 can be regenerated. When he saw this information, Han Fei was shocked. 3 big prawns at the mid-level of the Dao-seeking state. It was the first time that he had seen such a weird creature. Since the 3 prawns were in one body, he couldn't treat them as 3 mid-level Dao-seeking state monsters, but at least as high-level Dao-seeking state monsters. However, according to their legendary quality, Han Fei frowned. Their real combat power is at least at the peak level of the Dao-seeking state. The old turtle said, "Don't be careless. These Trilite cold prawns are one body, and you can't underestimate their strength." At this moment, there was no time to talk to the old turtle. Han Fei had already rushed out and the million knife art directly twisted the prawns that were emitting ice blue color. Crack, crack, crack. The prawns were shattered. Han Fei was stunned. How could they be killed so easily? This was obviously impossible. If they were killed with one slash, would these Trilite cold prawns still be legendary creatures? Sure enough, the blue prawns that were broken into pieces of ice turned into blue light cones, stabbing at Han Fei. Han Fei's reaction was extremely fast. He stomped his foot, and the soul-driving array immediately appeared. He clearly knew that these blue prawns could invade his soul, so he wouldn't have a chance to attack them. Bam, bam, bam. The soul-driving array rippled and was about to break. Han Fei stomped his foot and another one appeared. At the same time, Han Fei tried to release the void lines. However, as soon as the void lines were released, Han Fei felt that his soul trembled and his whole body stiffened. He happened to be hit head-on by the red and white rays of light. Puff! Clang! Han Fei's invincible will was pierced through with one blow. Immediately afterward, the red light pierced Han Fei's body like an arrow or a spear. With a harsh clang, Han Fei was blasted back a kilometer. Han Fei was blasted back a kilometer and didn't regain consciousness until halfway. Because of the Trilite cold prawns, the surrounding temperature seemed to have risen. However, that was just an illusion. In the extreme cold, even if the temperature rose a little, so what? Han Fei couldn't help but take a deep breath and look down at his chest. There was a small hole there, but it just so happened to be on his own bone, so it made a ding sound. Han Fei's face suddenly changed. What precise cooperation! No wonder they are legendary creatures. Chapter 1259. For a long time, Han Fei had encountered a lot of weird creatures on his expeditions. Taking into account the time he spent in the reincarnation world, Han Fei was quite experienced and knowledgeable. Therefore, Han Fei didn't take it seriously. At the moment when Han Fei retreated, the blue prawn had rushed at Little White. The red and white prawns tried to stop him. 2 rays of light, the white one was armor breaking, and the red one was enemy slaying. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't continue to fight. Before he stopped retreating, he had already blocked the way of the blue lobster. Moo, the 100 beasts' soul-suppressing roar was activated. This time, it was not a simulated dragon roar, but the old buffalo's voice. Han Fei grinned coldly. Who do you think you are to play soul attack with me? While Han Fei stopped the blue prawn, with a thought, Yu Wendao's puppet body appeared in the cold. Han Fei just wanted to see if Yu Wendao could resist the cold power. If he couldn't, he had to take it back. However, to Han Fei's surprise, Yu Wendao's body was burning with raging flames. In addition to the flames, Han Fei could also see that Yu Wendao's body was shaking, but he didn't know what it was for. Although Yu Wendao had been refined into a puppet, he could only sense Yu Wendao and give him some orders. Han Fei couldn't turn himself into Yu Wendao to fight. After all, this was not possession. A puppet could also use its power instinctively. Therefore, Han Fei actually didn't know how Yu Wendao fought. Hum. Han Fei punched the blue prawn again, only to see ripples in the seawater. It seemed that every drop of seawater was shaking. Yu Wendao intended to attack the prawn by shaking it. However, Han Fei saw that the flames on Yu Wendao's body were getting smaller and smaller, and his movements were getting slower and slower. The old turtle said, "After all, he's a puppet and can only fight by instinct." Besides, Yu Wendao's aptitude and spiritual heritage are not enough for him to fight for long in this environment. It's already good enough that he can help you block the attack of the two prawns. Han Fei's face was a little pale, but he still took back Yu Wendao. He couldn't help but feel speechless. This environment was too unfavorable for him. The void lines couldn't resist the freezing power, and neither could the puppet. He only had the infinity water. Wait, something's not right, Han Fei suddenly thought of something. The fire core and water luster were both legendary creatures. They seemed to be able to resist the power of extreme coldness, right? Whoosh! The next moment, the illusion of mountains and rivers appeared, along with the water and the fire seed. The moment it appeared, the flames on the tinder's body suddenly shrank, shrinking by nearly half. Hiss! The kindling's voice trembled. "Master, where are you? I'm a little cold." Han Fei sweated. "I'm in the middle of a fight. Do you think I can take it?" Water Luster said, "What a terrifying freezing power. Master, we've just become explorers. Although we can hold on for a while, we can only use 80% of our strength." Kindling added, "I'll take 60%, no. I'll take 50%. Han Fei was speechless. Then what's the point of fighting him? He's also a legend. The kindling and water luster naturally noticed the three light blazing shrimp, but there was a huge gap between them. This time, water luster and the kindling said at the same time, "We can't beat him." Water luster said, "I can probably stop one if I join hands with the kindling." Han Fei said, "Let's try." Shwa! Shwa! After that, Han Fei disappeared. He had already picked up Snowmorn and flashed crazily. It was impossible to see him with the naked eye. In the void, a sword flashed, and a wave of sword energy appeared in the water. The place where the sword energy passed was so sharp that the water was cut so fast that it formed a wall of water. Kacha! The blue and red prawns were cut off, but on the other side, a white light flashed, and the red and blue lights condensed into two prawns again. Han Fei's lips twitched. Their resurrection speed is really fast. The old turtle said, "It's not that they're fast, but that they're not dead at all. Only when the three prawns die at the same time will they merge into one. Only when they fuse will you be able to truly kill them." Poochie! Boom! The white head pierced through the water luster and collided with the water, causing an intense explosion and surging waves. The three light blazing shrimp didn't seem special when they fought each other, because they thought that Han Fei was too strong and ignored the fact that the shrimp was actually very strong. Although they were both legendary, the kindling and water luster couldn't gain any advantage. Moreover, the two of them had just become explorers, while the other party was almost 2 realms higher than them. This was a complete suppression. The illusion of mountains and rivers appeared, and Han Fei recalled them before water luster and the kindling had a chance to respond. If they couldn't beat the shrimp, they couldn't be abused by a shrimp. Han Fei could throw one of the 3 shrimps into the sea-quelling painting, because the 5 legendary creatures could definitely resist it. However, if they really fought, the sea-quelling painting would probably be a mess. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the mountains would collapse and the earth would crack. So this idea popped up in Han Fei's mind for a while, but it was immediately denied. Han Fei glanced at the prawn that turned blue again, and then at the red and white prawns that were rushing at him. At that moment, waves surged around Han Fei, and the infinity water was all drawn back into the normal seawater. Han Fei was expressionless. Sure enough, he had to be strong himself. "I don't believe that I can't defeat you with 3 shrimps today." How am I supposed to survive in this world? Looking back, Little White was still absorbing some kind of power from the big ice lump. Han Fei's figure disappeared again, and the golden fist mark rumbled and smashed at the white prawn. Spiritual piercing blasted at the blue prawn, and the drawing technique slashed at the red one. The blue prawn and the white prawn were smashed into pieces. But the white prawn broke his golden fist mark with its head. Han Fei seemed to have expected it. After several battles, he found a problem. If these 3 shrimps didn't collapse at the same time, it seemed that the last one would be invincible. As a matter of fact, when the red and blue prawns were crushed into pieces, a wave rolled up. The sacrificing fist mark broke out, pierced the bottom of the sea, and directly smashed the white prawn. Han Fei grinned. Done. Han Fei said, legendary creatures only have the characteristics of legendary creatures. If you can't target this characteristic, it will be very difficult to defeat them. If this characteristic is broken. Just like now. Explode. Han Fei opened his mouth gently, and the 3-color prawns suddenly exploded. A terrifying explosion sounded at the same time. After all, the infinity water was also a single weapon. If he wanted to self-destruct, it would be like an approved alarm clock, not even the slightest bit would be off. Bam! 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 Han Fei pulled out a fish skin map, and a set of Great Plate Turtle array protected Little White in it, while he was blown dozens of kilometers away. Above the Ice God Gorge, the mountain trembled slightly for a while as if an earthquake had occurred. The 3 venerables scanned with their perception, but no one went down to check. But the turtle venerable said, I'm afraid that they met their opponents down there. That makes sense. Some creatures down there are indeed special. The seahorse venerable said, this fish dragon king is not bad. He really passed through. The half-mermaid venerable said, of course he passed through. Look at the level of his demonic heritage. If he can really advance to a level 8, high-quality spiritual heritage. This means that as long as he doesn't die, he will definitely be much stronger than us in the end. The turtle venerable said leisurely, let's see how long he can last down there. Below the Ice God Gorge. The moment the tri-light blazing cold prawns shattered, they actually fused together. Yes, they didn't die but just fused. The fused prawns were more than 10 meters long, and the 3 spikes on their heads were red, white, and blue. At this moment, Han Fei roared, activated the devil change, and activated the Beast King art. Snowmorn burst out. Swish! Han Fei pushed out a terrifying sword attack with one hand, and the sword chi, like a milky white brilliance, pierced through the heads of the 3 prawns and came out from their tails. The red spike in the middle of the giant prawns had been shattered by Snowmorn. It couldn't have survived. As he expected, Han Fei sensed the attack and snorted. Advanced Dao-seeking state. I thought I would reach the peak. After the 3 prawns were beaten back to their original forms, they turned back into 3 bodies. However, they didn't move at all this time. Except for the broken shell of the red one, the other 2 were intact. They had died at the same time. Huh? They died just like that? The old turtle said, of course. Do you think legendary creatures are invincible? Everything is relative. You're just a kid with many tricks. Think about it. If it were someone else, they would have been killed more than 10 times. However, Han Fei didn't care about the old turtle's words. His eyes glowing, he cut the red prawn's shell with Snowmorn and said, a legendary shrimp vein? Han Fei couldn't help but pull it, and his eyes glittered. Good stuff. The void lines can be upgraded now. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1260. The 3-light blazing cold lobster didn't give Han Fei a chance to collect it at all. Its body was switching between the glow and reality. It was because of this strange ability that even a semi-venerable couldn't kill them if he didn't grasp the key points. But there were many treasures on the 3-light blazing cold lobster. Han Fei picked up 2 lobster spears, a cold crystal, and a ball of fire essence. The rest were the 3 meridians, and he put them in to forge the universe. However, as soon as the fire essence was put in to forge the universe, Little Black swallowed it in one gulp. Seeing this scene, Han Fei couldn't help but be vigilant. Little Black and Little White were originally inseparable, they were twins of yin and yang. Now, Little White encountered its own great opportunity, but Little Black didn't seem to like this opportunity. On the contrary, Little Black had a need for blazing flames. Kacha! Before Han Fei could think too much, suddenly, he heard a crisp crack, which turned out to be from the big ice lump that Little White swallowed. At this moment, Han Fei clearly saw a crack appear, and then the blue aura became denser and denser. However, soon, cracks appeared on the big ice lump one after another. Crack, 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 bam. Suddenly, the ice lump broke. Han Fei immediately took a breath. Fuck, this is not a rare treasure. The old turtle said, nonsense, of course not. The real treasure is just wrapped in this lump of ice. When the ice lump broke, Han Fei only felt that the surrounding temperature dropped again. In an instant, Han Fei retreated a kilometer. He almost couldn't resist the invincible will anymore. His whole body was burning flexibly. Han Fei began to refine himself as a divine weapon. Almost every second, 10,000 points of spiritual energy were burned up. Fortunately, he had enough spiritual energy reserves. Otherwise, a normal Tao-seeking state demon wouldn't be able to absorb enough energy from the void to meet this intensity of spiritual energy consumption. When the big ice lump was completely broken, Han Fei saw a sky-blue object that looked like an ice crystal flower. That thing was like a firecracker held in his hand, and its surface was flashing irregularly. Its shape was more exaggerated than that of the infinity water. After the infinity water was picked, it turned into a drop of water, and no one could recognize it in the water. As for the blue object, it didn't look like water, nor did it look like ice. Just by looking at it, one could tell that it was extraordinary. As a matter of fact, that thing actually produced a connection mist with Little White. It seemed to be injecting its main body into Whitey's body. Although Han Fei really wanted to see if the demon purification pot could read it, he didn't dare to do so. But the old turtle suddenly said, I understand. Han Fei was confused. What did you understand? The old turtle said, this can be considered a natural treasure, but it's not the best. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the blue sea ice sand, a natural treasure that has been nurtured in extremely cold places for a long time. The reason why I couldn't sense it before was because the damage to my soul was too severe. At most, this is equivalent to that drop of water. Infinity water? Han Fei exclaimed. Are you kidding me? This thing is already comparable to the infinity water. How can it not be the best? Although the infinity water doesn't seem to have any particularly powerful effects and power, it's very useful. It could grow as he grew. Even if I have a drop of infinity water, it may be enough for me until I become a king, because the infinity water is suitable for every realm. Li Huang of the Heavenly Desolation City also became a city treasure. Han Fei felt that there would definitely be more uses for it in the future. But there was something comparable to the infinity water under the Ice God Gorge, which was too exaggerated. The old turtle said, I've seen it before. This thing may not be as good as your drop of water, but it was born naturally and coincides with the great way of heaven and earth. Therefore, it is very attractive to creatures of the same kind. This also shows that your little white fish has a great way of heaven and earth. In this case, your spiritual beast should be born with a great way of heaven and earth, which is extremely rare in this barren land. Han Fei was suspicious. Are you saying that their great ways coincide? The old turtle nodded. Of course. When you took that drop of water, you chose it with the water, not the water, right? Han Fei's body trembled. How do you know? The old turtle sneered. I have seen more natural spiritual treasures than you have eaten. How can I not know? Unless one could forcefully suppress a heaven and earth spiritual treasure, it was usually the treasure that chose its people. It was not something that one could use just because one liked it. Otherwise, this grain of ice wouldn't still be under the ice god gorge. Han Fei took a breath. So, it likes my little white? The old turtle smiled. It's a reaction. I told you that after you enter the Tao, different opportunities will produce a reaction. Your little white fish is born with a great way of heaven, and so is this grain of ice. This is a reaction. Han Fei couldn't help asking, what about little black? The old turtle said, it's simple. Yin and yang complement each other. The little white fish swallowed a natural spiritual treasure. Find a fire attribute natural spiritual treasure for the little black fish to swallow. Isn't there also a fire seed in your painting? It has already developed intelligence. Although it may be a little worse than this grain of ice, it can barely complement this grain of black yarn. Han Fei's face turned green. What the hell? Killing my own people? Is this Han Fei's style? He's calling me master, so I can't just do that, can I? Besides, didn't the fire seed come out just now? It almost froze and died. How can the fire seed compare with this guy? Maybe even the fire seed itself doesn't believe it. Han Fei shrugged. That's impossible. The fire seed is mine. The old turtle was speechless. Do you have a bottom line? Han Fei said with a black face, Old Yuan, don't put your ideas on me. I have a bottom line. Next time you talk to me like this, we're not friends anymore. The old turtle sneered in his heart. What the hell? Do you have a bottom line? Even the turtle laughed. The old turtle said leisurely, if you can't, you can go to your junior sister. Isn't there a fire tree in the Sea of Flames? Something that can burn such a large area of the sea for thousands of years must be extraordinary. Han Fei frowned. That's true. I said that thing looks like a parasol tree. However, Han Fei thought of something else. In fact, in addition to the fire tree, if the Blood Sea Divine Wood City was full of big red trunks, there should be no shortage of fire attribute treasures, right? Thinking of this, Han Fei decided not to be so anxious. If there were treasures, he could eat them and find a way to solve the problem of malnutrition later. Suddenly, Han Fei's pupils constricted. He saw that little white actually opened its mouth and swallowed the whole ice sand. After the blue sea ice sand was swallowed by little white, the spiritual fire on Han Fei's body jumped 10 meters away. The terrifying freezing power disappeared. Although it was still very cold here, it was completely incomparable to just now. Han Fei's perception even extended more than a kilometer. Besides, the temperature here was soaring rapidly. He believed that after a while, his perception range would continue to increase. Then, in Han Fei's mind, little black's voice sounded, Dad, let me out. I'm going to make a breakthrough. Han Fei shivered. Is he going to make a breakthrough? Han Fei didn't dare to take it lightly. With a thought, little black jumped out. Swish! Little black swam to little white's side, and then the two circled each other. The two fishes were even more crystal clear. The milky white brilliance on little white's body was comparable to the brilliance of the apocalyptic divine technique. And little black was even darker. Han Fei couldn't even see the details of little black's body with his eyesight. Fuck! It's all absorbed. Han Fei was shocked. There was a kind of darkness that could even absorb light. It was so dark that it could turn into a shadow. The reason why little black could still be seen was because of the environment. Compared with the pitch-black water, little black's darkness was purer. It was so pure that no matter how hard Han Fei looked, he could only see a mass of darkness, and he had to use his perception to distinguish it. Feeling that the surrounding spiritual energy was drilling into little black and little white's bodies, Han Fei took out a huge amount of spiritual spring and threw it over. These were his unique spiritual beasts. No matter how much he ate, he had to raise them. Little black and little white simply drilled into the spiritual spring, and the spiritual spring disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Han Fei couldn't help but be a little surprised. Are the standards for breakthroughs so high now? He had thrown out at least 10,000 caddies of spiritual spring, which was equivalent to 10 million points of spiritual energy. It had only been a few minutes and they were almost done. The old turtle said, "When you become a cultivator, you will understand that spiritual energy is actually not the key. The reason why you are still using spiritual energy is that you haven't comprehended the dismantling of spiritual energy enough." Han Fei narrowed his eyes when he heard the dismantling of spiritual energy. Shu Shushan seemed to have told him that when he became an explorer, he could actually start the next step of dismantling spiritual energy. When this was over, he would like to see why spiritual energy was not spiritual energy anymore. He threw out another 10,000 caddies of spiritual spring. Suddenly, Han Fei scanned his perception range and found that it had already covered a range of 10,000 meters. He saw that there seemed to be creatures moving in the ice at the bottom of the sea. Han Fei was shocked. There seemed to be a lot of creatures down there. The old turtle said, "Of course, when the freezing power is gone, there will naturally be creatures starting to recover, but not many. Even if the blue sea smoothie is gone, this is still a place that can breed smoothies. The ice that has been frozen for tens of millions of years can't be broken easily. It will be difficult for them to come out without decades or even 100 years." As soon as the old turtle said that, a big octopus appeared. It was all white and looked sick. Han Fei said leisurely, "Didn't you say it would take hundreds of years?" The old turtle pondered. Maybe some of them were not frozen at all. The second chapter. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1261. Of course, the big octopus could see Han Fei, but in its eyes, Han Fei was just a peak-level sea spirit. At this level, it could suck him to death with one tentacle. Han Fei didn't panic at all. Without the suppression of the power of extreme cold, all of his techniques could be said to be undone. No matter how powerful this giant octopus was, what could it do? He had the old tortoise, the fish Dao seeking, and himself. If he put in a bit more effort, it would be equivalent to 3.5 venerables. How could he not even kill an octopus? Little Black and Little White made breakthroughs very fast. When the octopus approached, Han Fei had already heard a crisp sound of a breakthrough. From then on, Little Black and Little White finally entered the sea spirit realm. However, to Han Fei's surprise, why didn't they enforce the law? Didn't spiritual beasts need to enforce the law? However, Han Fei didn't check their progress for the time being, because the big octopus was already here. A string of information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Name a virtual white zhang. Introduction, a special creature that exists between reality and illusion. The illusory Bai Zhang can fall into the dark void at any time, and space has no effect on it. He was adept at concealment and attacking from the void. 1 attack on the soul, 2 attacks on the body. He was extremely difficult to deal with. He was good at regrowing limbs, and his escaping speed was extremely fast. Level, 77, Law Enforcement, Void Tentacle, Void, Quality, Legendary Spiritual Energy greater than 975,689 points. Effect, there is a certain chance to comprehend the secret laws of space. Collectible, none. Absorbable, Han Fei took a look and immediately understood. Although this giant octopus wasn't weak, it was still far from being comparable to the Tri-Light Blazing Cold Shrimp. Void? Han Fei couldn't help but smile. The heavenly illusionary divine walking art was practiced in such an environment. You want to play with me? Without waiting for Old Turtle and Fish to ask, Han Fei stepped into the illusion, punched out, and the sacrificing punch burst out. The big octopus was shocked by Han Fei's move. The big octopus thought to itself, half of my body is in the void. Why are you here? Looking at Han Fei's terrifying punch, as a creature with 3 hearts and 9 brains, he was shocked. Once the enemy made a move, it would be clear whether or not there was one. The first thing this illusory Bai Zhang did was choose to flee. Han Fei sneered. Do you think I'll let you run away? Whoosh! In the void, as soon as the 2 tentacles of the giant octopus drilled into the void fissure, it felt a life-threatening crisis. The octopus turned its head and shot out a beam of white light at Han Fei. Han Fei was slightly shocked. Do octopuses all have laser eyes? However, this was not a special environment, so Han Fei dodged it easily. In fact, he didn't even need to use stellar transposition. Now that he had become an explorer, the phantom glass wings would no longer grow. However, his infinite flash ability could still easily avoid this kind of light. Back then, the nine-headed snake grass's laser was truly ruthless. It was like a fucking infrared ray, blasting everywhere. Without giving the virtual Bai Zhang a chance to continue attacking, Han Fei directly appeared beside it, clasped one of its tentacles with one hand, and held it tightly with the needless thread. Peng peng. When he grabbed the big octopus, he saw that the two tentacles that went deep into the space crack suddenly broke. Instantly, Han Fei felt that the vitality of the big octopus was reduced by 30%. The old turtle replied, "Some of them escaped." Han Fei was speechless. Was this octopus a gecko? Geckos had short tails to survive, but so did it. However, while geckos ran with their bodies, this octopus ran with its tails. Of course, about 1/3 of the octopus had escaped, and there were still 2 hearts and 7 brains left. The creatures that could live under the ice god gorge must have strong souls. Not to mention that the virtual Bai Zhang was a legendary creature, it was level 77, which was also an advanced Dao-seeking realm creature. It was not that Han Fei couldn't control it, but the problem was that with so many brains, it was very difficult for Han Fei to control it. Swish! Suddenly, a streak of white suddenly appeared. It was none other than Little White. In fact, Little White was not the only one who came. Little Black also came, but Little Black was too dark at this moment and Han Fei didn't notice it. When Han Fei took a closer look, Little Black had bitten one of the virtual Bai Zhang's tentacles. Little White also seemed to have a new ability. It opened its mouth and spurted out a stream of white gas, but the big octopus stiffened for a while. However, the effect made Han Fei speechless. Little Black ground its teeth on the tentacle but didn't bite it. He could only hear a harsh sizzling sound. Little White's original intention should be to freeze the big octopus. Han Fei felt very cold, and the big octopus also stiffened for a while. But this strength was not enough at all. It was many times weaker than the actual strength of this ice or whatever. Han Fei was speechless. My dear girl. Do you still not know how to use it? Humph. The old turtle said, what it ate was a natural spiritual treasure. But don't you also have a sea-quelling bizarre treasure? Can you exert its strength? Han Fei was speechless. So that's what happened. It turned out that the ice sand was not weak, but the power that Little White could exert was too weak. Han Fei couldn't help but laugh and summoned Little Fatty out again. However, as soon as Little Fatty came out, its body began to freeze, and it hurriedly shouted, I'll go back, for Little Black and Little White, maybe because they were special, the freezing power had no effect on them at all, and even the source of the ice was swallowed by Little White. But Little Fatty's strength was still very low. It hadn't even reached level 50. With a swish, Han Fei ignited his spiritual fire and wrapped it around Little Fatty. There's a member of your clan here. Suck some blood from him. Little Fatty couldn't perceive the strength of an advanced Dao-seeking state creature. Seeing that there was a strong member of its clan, it immediately crawled over. However, Little Fatty sucked so hard that its body began to tremble, and it couldn't suck out a single drop of essence blood. Little Fatty said, Master, can you cut it open? Han Fei curled his lips. Now you know how to call me master. The infinity water turned into a knife and cut crazily. The fate of this illusory white octopus had been decided. Little Fatty immediately became excited. When its essence blood was sucked away for the first time, it said, I'm going to make a breakthrough later. Han Fei thought, it's only natural for you to make a breakthrough. You've been stuck for a long time. At this moment, Han Fei finally had the time to check the information of Little Black and Little White. In his eyes, information popped up. Name a twin yin-yang spirit-swallowing fish. Introduction. This is a descendant of the mysterious ancient yin-yang sky-swallowing fish. The black and white fish live together. The white fish is docile, and the black fish is brutal. They are symbiotic. As long as one of them survives, the other won't die. Level 61. Quality. A mysterious is stored spiritual energy greater than 100 million points, evolving, food omnivorous, can swallow anything. Combat skills. Supreme yin-yang wheel, spirit swallowing body, fusion, Gemini divine technique. Remarks. The black fish is invisible. Except for the master, only the yin-yang divine eyes born by nature can see through it. After the fusion, its combat power will be greatly increased and it will be comparable to a divine weapon. Contains soul energy greater than 6,506 points. This time, Han Fei was a little stunned. They had only broken through to the sea spirit state, hadn't they? But the amount of stored spiritual energy suddenly soared to 100 million. Besides, after this breakthrough, Little Black and Little White directly passed level 60 and seemed to have stabilized their realm in the sea spirit state. Could it be that their previous accumulation was deep enough? Of course, in any case, Little Black and Little White had definitely become much stronger. What kind of life form could cause a high-level Tao-seeking realm life form to stiffen when they had just entered the sea spirit realm? Which living being would dare to hug the tentacle of a high-level Tao-seeking realm cultivator and chew on it? Even if they couldn't chew on it, they would still chew on it, leaving rows of teeth marks. Not only that, Han Fei also found that Little Black and Little White had one more technique. Gemini divine technique? Han Fei said that the spirit-swallowing body was almost a passive technique. The fusion technique had its drawbacks, so he rarely used it. At this moment, a new technique popped up. Could it be that every time Little Black and Little White advanced to a higher realm, a new technique would appear? Han Fei thought, since there's no one around, I have to give it a try, right? Then, Han Fei stabbed the big octopus a dozen times with snowmorn. It couldn't be more dead. Then, with a thought, he released Yuan Dao and ordered, kill all intruders. The old turtle was puzzled. What are you doing? Han Fei said, Gemini divine technique. Since there was no one around, he might as well try it now. Just when Han Fei was ready to go all out and was ready to control the scene at any time. With a puff, Little Black and Little White directly turned into black smoke and white eyes. The two clouds of smoke entangled with each other. Huh? Han Fei was stunned. What's going on? Something that was known as a divine art was gone just like that? Han Fei couldn't help but glance at the corner of his mouth, not knowing what to do for a moment. However, the black and white smoke that Little Black and Little White turned into pounced at the big octopus. Han Fei was horrified by the pounce, because he saw that the octopus shriveled at a high speed. Surrounded by the black smoke, Little Black, who couldn't bite it a moment ago, was gnawing quickly. In Han Fei's perception, it didn't seem to be gnawing, but corroding. As for Little White, it was even more awesome. It swallowed a massive soul. Based on Han Fei's experience, the soul of the big octopus should have dispersed, but part of it was still pulled out and swallowed by Little White. Little Fatty shrieked, "Mine! It's mine!" Han Fei immediately said, "Stop." The old turtle was slightly shocked too. Is this the great technique that they awakened? They've already reached the Tao. That's impossible. How can it be? Hiss. Suddenly, the old turtle came to an abrupt stop, as if he thought of something. Han Fei was stunned too. Looking at Little Black and Little White who turned back into two fish, he asked in confusion, "Old Yuan, what's going on?" After a long silence, the old turtle said unhurriedly, Are these two fish really Kanate Taoism bodies? The third chapter. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1262. Seeing the old turtle's surprise, Han Fei couldn't help but touch his head. What's wrong with the Kanate Taoist aptitude? Are they born with Taoist auras? Although Han Fei was excellent, he didn't know any of these secrets. The old turtle suddenly roared, "What do you know? I should have thought of it." There are very few people who can see your little black fish. Little white fish seems to only be able to absorb spiritual energy, but they can also carry essence. Han Fei interrupted, okay, I know my son and daughter very well. Do I need you to brag? Just tell me, what's wrong with the Khanate Taoist aptitude? Is the Khanate Taoist aptitude very strong? The old turtle said gloomily, the Khanate Taoist aptitude means that from the moment they are born by nature. They may be born in chaos, or in the rules of the great Tao, or by absorbing the essence of Taoist aura over the years. In short, they have entered the Tao since they were born. In this world, there is a unique great Tao waiting for them to walk on. A unique great Tao. The old turtle sneered. Yes, you heard it right. It is a unique great Tao. This is the power of the Khanate Taoist aptitude. Only the Khanate Taoist seed, the ancient Taoist seed, and those great Taoists that no one has walked on but can go very far. The old tortoise said enviously, I can tell you this about a creature of this level. As long as they don't die, they can become kings. Han Fei couldn't help but smile. Old Yuan, don't brag. In all my life, the number of people I've seen, know, and become kings can be counted on one hand. There are billions of creatures in the two oceans. Since when did becoming a king become a joke? The old tortoise smiled contemptuously. Vision determines everything. Your horizons are too narrow, and you're destined to have a narrow vision. You have to go out of this world and see the billions of creatures in this vast ocean. There are countless strong masters. Han Fei quickly interrupted, Stop. I understand. Little Black and Little White have entered the Tao since they were born. It can also be said that their growth has always been according to their own great Tao. The old turtle let out a long, and said, Not bad. Goodoo. Han Fei swallowed. She definitely has a powerful background. Han Fei even wondered if he really got Little Black and Little White because of the calabash. But no matter what, this born Taoism aptitude was very strong. Looking at Little Fatty that was still absorbing the essence blood, Han Fei looked at Little Black and Little White, and then at their information. He couldn't help but mumble, Is the fusion technique really useless? Han Fei was a little confused. What if he performed the Gemini divine technique after fusing? With this idea in mind, Han Fei was immediately interested. He roared, Merge! When Han Fei, Little Black, and Little White fused into a big fish, Han Fei shouted again, Gemini divine technique. Buzz! Han Fei felt that his head went blank for a moment, and a piercing pain brought him back to himself. When Han Fei came back to his senses, he saw himself again for some reason. Although this wasn't the first time he had experienced such a feeling, it still felt a little weird. At this moment, Han Fei confirmed one thing. It was not that the fusion technique was useless, but that he hadn't unlocked Little Black and Little White's follow-up combat techniques. For example, at this moment, Han Fei found that half of himself had turned into a black mist, and the other half into a white mist. At this moment, he found that the black mist was not really black mist, but an indescribable substance that made him want to eat something. When Han Fei rushed to the body of the big octopus, Little Fatty shouted again, It's mine. It's mine. Han Fei wanted to speak, but only his spiritual power trembled in the water. Your level is too low. You can only swallow one tentacle at most. Why are you panicking? When Han Fei curled up a tentacle, his perception changed at this moment. The black mist seemed to have been activated. Han Fei felt as if he had been split into thousands of parts, or that he was a whole, and that his body was full of sharp teeth. He, who had turned into a white mist, felt very cool and sensitive to souls. In the perception of the white mist, Han Fei found that there were 3 souls in all directions, which meant that there were at least 3 creatures nearby. All in all, it was a strange feeling. In any case, the octopus tentacle was disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. What the hell am I? How can I show any divine technique? I can't even transform into a human being. As soon as Han Fei thought of this, the two bodies that were made of mist began to change shape and turned into two people in the blink of an eye. Huh? Han Fei looked at himself in shock. From Little Black's body, he had turned into a humanoid Han Fei, who was as strong as a junior explorer. From Little White's side, he was black. Not only his face, but even his eyes were black. From top to bottom, he couldn't see the slightest decoration on his body. He was pure black, a black that could even swallow light. Wow! Two of me. The normal Han Fei and the black Han Fei both gasped at the same time. According to Han Fei's experience, although his soul was the same, it was essentially separated. Since it was separated, different souls could be used to do different things. Thinking of this, the two Han Feis looked at each other. External incarnation. Suddenly, the old turtle's voice sounded. Not an external incarnation. Otherwise, it's impossible for your soul to be split into two, but I don't feel any change in your soul. The way I see it, your spirit is still one, because the little black fish and the little white fish are one in the first place. The normal Han Fei said, not an external incarnation. Then why? I feel that there is a gap in strength. Let me try it. The two Han Feis clenched their fists, and the seawater shook and their strength burst out. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. A little weak. By rights, my strength has broken through to more than 200 waves at this moment, but now both of us feel that it's about 150 waves. The old turtle scoffed. Nonsense. Although your soul is still one, it has been used separately after all. Therefore, the comprehensive strength of a single body will inevitably decline. Han Fei couldn't wait to check his mind. Sure enough, both of them could see the information of the demon purification pot. In his eyes, information emerged. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 70, Junior Explorer, Spiritual Energy 98654986554, Spiritual Power 13568/13568, Perception Range greater than 1000 km, Law Enforcer, Invincible, Strength greater than 148 waves 4, Little White, 156 waves 4, Little Black. First Spiritual Heritage Unknown, Second Spiritual Heritage Unawakened, First Spiritual Beast, Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, Level 61, Second Spiritual Beast Unawakened, Main Art Sky Stealing Technique, Level 6 of Void Fishing. Venerable Level, Divine Quality. Han Fei was shocked to find that what he saw were two sets of templates. For the different bodies of Little Black and Little White, the power information of the two sets of templates was only slightly different. In terms of strength, Little Black seemed to be born a little higher than Little White. Han Fei couldn't help but feel excited again. If these were two independent templates, did it mean that he could use different templates to carry out different cultivation? What was the difference between that and an external incarnation? Besides, although he had become two of himself, it seemed that neither of them was weak. Although they were not as strong as his original body, Han Fei knew very well that Little Black and Little White were only level 61 now. What if Little Black and Little White reached the Tao-seeking state? Han Fei couldn't help but breathe fast. That probably meant that when he performed the Gemini Divine Technique again, he could have at least twice the combat power of his original body. Oh, no. Combat power statistics couldn't be calculated by just adding numbers. Under certain circumstances, the destructive power and threat produced by two true bodies and one true body might be two completely different concepts. For example, if he played a diversion trick with others, it would be very accurate. Another idea arose in Han Fei's mind. What if I hide and forge the universe? Swish! The normal Han Fei appeared and forged the universe, and the black Han Fei was still outside because he didn't have this idea. The black Han Fei was touching his chin, trying to find out if there was an entrance to forge the universe. This was the first time he had faced this situation. Half of him was hiding, and the other half was still outside. Seeing this, the old turtle couldn't help but mutter, I really don't know whether you are lucky or blessed by the great way. Although this technique is not an external incarnation, I'm afraid it is no worse than an external incarnation. Han Fei said, I think this is an external incarnation. The old turtle said, don't jump to conclusions too early. Fight with Yuan Dao without using spiritual energy. Han Fei nodded in his heart. That's true. Immediately, the two of them used devil change at the same time, but they didn't use the Overlord's technique. Mainly, Han Fei wanted to see if he could maintain the existence of these two bodies by himself. Yuan Dao was a half-venerable anyway. Han Fei ordered him to only block. In an instant, a battle broke out under the Ice God Gorge. Yuan Dao defended, and the two Han Feis attacked. After 100 minutes, Han Fei ran out of spiritual energy, so he grabbed from the void with his strength as an explorer. After half an hour, Han Fei felt a little tired, not physically, but mentally. More than half of his spiritual energy had been consumed. Half an hour later, when Han Fei's last trace of spiritual energy was consumed, the two bodies finally couldn't hold it anymore and collapsed into mist again. Then, Han Fei separated from Little Black and Little White. Not only did Han Fei feel that his mental state was extremely poor, but also Little Black and Little White's mental state was not good. Han Fei took out 7 or 8 spiritual fruits, threw a few to Little Black, ate a few himself, and immediately took Little Black and Little White back. And Little Fatty, with its eyes wide open, had been watching for a long time. No one knew what it was thinking. But Han Fei didn't think it understood. He heard the old turtle say, as Ben Huang expected. Although this technique is not an external incarnation, it may be a little stronger than an external sea god. At least an external incarnation needs to cultivate, but you don't even need to cultivate. Even I envy you. Chapter 1263. Han Fei's head was swollen. The old turtle was right. This was not an external incarnation. However, Han Fei still had a lot of things to test. Now, he just tested that in the case of battle, two of him could exist for half an hour. But what if it was not a battle but a cultivation? Han Fei felt that there was still a lot of room for research in this. In addition to cultivation, if one of them died, then which part of the soul would be crushed? Or would it be the same as Little Black and Little White? As long as one side didn't die, the other would return. Of course, this was not easy to test. Han Fei felt that the other half of him would definitely not die. After all, the other half of him was still alive. However, something like a divine soul could never be determined. What if it was captured by someone else? For example, his void lines, possession, and the means to restrain the soul. For this kind of thing, it was better to believe that it existed than not. If he really encountered it, he would try it later. Taking advantage of this time, Little Fatty was desperately sucking the other half's essence blood. Han Fei's spiritual power was also weak. He quickly took out the God-scaring painting and visualized it again. During the years in the Wind and Rain Village, Han Fei basically did nothing else. Except pretending to be a master, he basically spent the rest of his time cultivating the God-scaring painting. Meanwhile, the range of his perception also increased rapidly. Until he successfully passed the tribulation, his perception range had reached an astonishing more than 1,900 kilometers. Han Fei wasn't very clear about this range. Logically speaking, as an explorer, 1,000 kilometers should be enough, right? When he killed an intermediate Dao-seeking state great demon in the domain of ice, the other party's perception range seemed to be more than 800 kilometers. Han Fei was very sure that it was definitely less than 1,000 kilometers. Besides, there was a big difference between him and other experts in the same realm. His growth was too fast. On the other hand, ordinary explorers might spend hundreds, or even thousands of years to become explorers. How many years had it been? 25 years? Of course, Han Fei knew that the strength of the soul could be increased through visualization. Therefore, even in the same realm, there was no specific range. Whose divine soul was stronger? No one except himself would know, let alone tell others. Just like this God-scaring painting, Han Fei had already remembered half of it. At this time, a big spear had been revealed. Yes, it was a gun. Han Fei had identified it carefully and found that the spear in the god-scaring painting had 2 blades on both sides, which were as thin as cicada wings, and a wisp of metal at the tip of the spear was full of killing intent. When Han Fei first saw the tip, he felt that it was bright and seemed to be able to see through the picture. Now, it seemed that it was a manifestation of extreme sharpness. He retracted his consciousness. Han Fei glanced at Forge the Universe. He didn't have many soul crystals now. After all, soul crystals were no longer of much use to him. At this moment, he no longer needed to rely on soul crystals to cultivate his mental strength. Of course, if it was an extremely powerful soul crystal, it should also be useful. However, he had yet to encounter one. Whether it was Yuan Dao or Gue Sanqing's Sun Moon Shell, there was no such thing. It could be seen that the improvement of one's divine soul would be more difficult the further one progressed. Just now, Han Fei visualized the god-scaring painting, not to continue to improve his soul power, but to recover his soul. Of course, he could also absorb and refine the souls of the people he had sucked dry in the Thousand Mountains ancient realm. 3 hours later. Han Fei took a long breath and slowly opened his eyes, looking helpless. More than 1,000 ownerless souls. In total, his soul power had increased by 2,000 points, and his perception range had increased by less than 1/10. The old turtle said, "Actually, I've already told you this before. If you really want to cultivate your soul, then keep swallowing the vitality of others. The speed of your improvement will amaze you." Han Fei curled his lips. "I'm already amazed at my own improvement speed. I don't need you to teach me." Han Fei thought to himself, don't be assimilated by the old turtle's ideas. In the old turtle's world, robbing people was a matter of course, regardless of reason or race. But Han Fei couldn't. If it weren't for the fact that he had many secrets, was talented, lucky, and tough means, he wouldn't have been able to do it. Han Fei felt that the old turtle wouldn't care about him at all. "Don't disturb me. I'll make a small breakthrough by the way." A large amount of spiritual energy flowed out, and thousands of points of spiritual energy surrounded Han Fei. Who? Using the swallowing technique, spiritual energy poured in and cleansed his body. After about half an hour, he heard a click and Han Fei made a breakthrough. He opened his eyes and looked at the information. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 71, Junior Explorer, Spiritual Energy, 130,000/130,000, Spiritual Power, 12348/22066, Perception Range greater than 1,912 km, Law Enforcer, Invincible Power greater than 216 waves, First Spiritual Heritage, Unknown, Second Spiritual Heritage, Unawakened, First Spiritual Beast, Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, Level, 61, Second Spiritual Beast Unawakened Main Art, Sky Stealing Technique, Level 6 of Void Fishing, Venerable Level, Divine Quality. Looking at his data, Han Fei was quite pleased. This was his growth during this period of time. After 4 years of suppression, his strength had tripled in just a few days in the Waterwood Heaven. Although the old tortoise always gave him advice, in fact, Han Fei knew very well that his own growth speed was not slow at all. It could even be said that this speed was extremely fast. Now in the Yin-Yang Heaven, there shouldn't be anyone who could cultivate faster than him. The Yin-Yang Heaven was like this, and so was the Waterwood Heaven. Even if it was a bug clan, the Bug Queen could at most reach the level of a law enforcer, right? It was impossible for a Bug Queen to directly become an explorer. In fact, many Bug Queens wouldn't directly cultivate a law enforcer. Because the law enforcer ability was given by the Bug Queen, which undoubtedly limited the Bug Queen's development potential. But if the Bug Clan fought all the way up, their law enforcers would have all kinds of strange abilities. This was conducive to the reasonable development of the Bug Clan. Only in this way would this race become more and more abnormal. When Han Fei got up, there were no more creatures here. After all, even if it was a Tao-seeking state, the death of the 3 light-blazing cold lobster and the virtual white octopus was enough to warn those creatures that hadn't appeared yet. Little Fatty seemed to be in the midst of a breakthrough. With a thought, Han Fei threw tens of thousands of kilograms of spirit awakening fluid to it. When it swallowed about 20,000 kilograms of spirit awakening fluid, Little Fatty had already completed the breakthrough. However, this was only a breakthrough in the sea demon realm, so it wasn't difficult. When Han Fei was in this realm, he broke through 5 or 6 levels in a row with the help of spirit awakening fluid. Therefore, Han Fei planned to use the same trick again. Of course, he didn't feed it the spirit awakening fluid immediately. He had to wait for Little Fatty to stabilize first. However, this didn't prevent Han Fei from reading the information of Little Fatty. In his eyes, information emerged. Name: a 9-death soul-splitting octopus. Introduction: an ancient mutant with a weak divine beast bloodline. The suckers have the ability to absorb spiritual energy, and essence blood. The 9-death soul-splitting octopus has extremely strong spiritual power and can ignore the spiritual attacks of all creatures within 10 levels of itself. It has infinite strength, can offset 90% of the attacks, and has a super strong self-healing ability. Level of 50 Equality: a legendary, can grow, contains spiritual energy. 20868 Food: a carnivorous, prefers shrimps and crabs. Combat skills: limb rebirth, blood drop rebirth, soul-splitting tentacles. Remarks: a blood drop rebirth, shared by the host and the 9-death soul-splitting octopus. It can only be used 9 times in a lifetime, and there are 7 times left. For Han Fei, Little Fatty only made a breakthrough in one realm. However, for Little Fatty itself, this realm had been stuck for a long time. What made Han Fei's eyes light up was that there was an additional combat skill called soul-splitting tentacles. The name didn't sound simple at all. However, he didn't have a test subject with him, so he didn't study it for the time being. Perhaps it was because it realized that it was too weak. With the remains of the octopus here, it had exhausted itself for a long time and only managed to absorb a little bit of blood essence. Little Fatty said, "Give this body to me. I need to make a breakthrough quickly." Han Fei was briefly stunned. "I only have less than 100,000 kilograms of spirit awakening fluid left." Little Fatty nodded. "Plus this body, it should be enough for me for a while." It seemed to have made a breakthrough. Little Fatty's head was much clearer, and it knew that it had accumulated enough resources. What it urgently needed now was a higher level. Han Fei immediately stored Little Fatty and the illusory by Zhang into Forge the Universe. The spirit awakening fluid and the spiritual spring were both in Forge the Universe. The old turtle said, "You can't raise contractual spiritual beasts like this. They need to fight and kill." Every living being had to walk out of the path of slaughter, step by step. Even if it's a 9-death soul-splitting octopus. Han Fei curled his lips. "But if I'm killed, I can still be resurrected." The old turtle sneered. "Then you should let it roam the world by itself. If you are separated from it, if something happens to you, no one can find it. Then you can be resurrected, right?" Han Fei was stunned for a while. "No. Wait a minute. I'm not an educated person. Don't lie to me. Doesn't the resurrection ability of the 9-death soul-splitting octopus need to be with its host?" "Humph." The old turtle said helplessly, "Who told you this?" "That's the 9-death soul-splitting octopus. A fully grown 9-death soul-splitting octopus must be an exotic species. Even if you are thousands of kilometers away, it can still resurrect you." Han Fei said in disbelief, "Old Yuan, are you sure you're talking about the 9-death soul-splitting octopus in the sea demon realm?" This time, the old turtle was silent for a long time. "I don't know." Han Fei rolled his eyes. "What's the difference between you and me?" Although Han Fei felt that Little Fatty was very powerful, it shouldn't be so powerful. It was only level 50, in the sea demon realm. If it could be resurrected from a long distance, even a venerable wouldn't be able to do it. However, he didn't intend to take Little Fatty with him in the first place. Therefore, as long as the opportunity was right, he would throw it out to practice. Above the ice god gorge, he still couldn't perceive what was happening below. In the words of the old turtle, this was a place that could breed the blue sea ice sand. Because of the extreme heat and extreme cold, it was still not a place that any creature could come in. For example, when little Fatty just appeared, it was almost frozen to death. Fortunately, Han Fei lit a spiritual fire to warm its body. Otherwise, it would have frozen to death. When Han Fei returned to the white mist, he couldn't help but ask, "Old Yuan, I made a lot of noise down there. What's going on up there?" Chapter 1264. Faced with Han Fei's question, the old turtle couldn't help but say, "What can happen? It's nothing more than a venerable scanning with his perception. Even if you take this opportunity, what can they do?" Han Fei followed the old turtle's words and said, "They will tell the king, and the king will notice me. If the king notices me, then I will be in danger. God knows if the king will see through me." The old turtle said, "Even I can't see through you. You are now a sea demon, a genuine sea demon. The only problem is your real strength. If you are really discovered, you just need to create the illusion that you are transcending a tribulation and increase your strength to the primary Tao-seeking state, and the problem will be mostly solved." Han Fei was speechless. "I have already transcended the tribulation. How can I trigger the lightning?" The old turtle said, "That's none of my business. However, in this vast sea, there will always be someone who can transcend a tribulation. What do you think?" Han Fei's eyes lit up and he exclaimed, "Sure enough, the older, the wiser. As long as I control the creature transcending the tribulation and let it transcend the tribulation, I can deprive it of its tribulation. In this way, I can create the illusion that it is transcending the tribulation." The old turtle said, "I didn't teach you that." Han Fei said, "That's what you think. However, it doesn't matter. This is a good method. If it doesn't work, I still have one last way. The fish dragon king is still in my hands. If it is really in a hurry, I can steal its opportunity to transcend the tribulation. It can't be more convenient." In Forge the Universe, the fish dragon king looked at little Fatty who was holding a big octopus and absorbing its essence and blood. For some reason, it had a bad feeling. The fish dragon king lay on the ground in frustration, thinking, "The rest of my life is over." Han Fei readjusted his state. Everything seemed to have calmed down. In fact, he even practiced the close distance technique for an entire day in the white fog. He found some creatures to fight for a long time, as if the people above the Ice God Gorge didn't know about it. Although this move was a bumpkin, those venerables were prejudiced and thought, "Even we can't get it." "How can you get it?" A day later, Han Fei came out of the mist, looking full of energy and strength. At this moment, Gue Sanqing, who had been possessed by the old turtle, suddenly opened his eyes and followed Han Fei. Han Fei transformed back into the fish dragon king and entered the Ice God Gorge. Immediately, a venerable summoned him. Different from the Thousand-Star City. In the Thousand-Star City, not everyone could see a venerable casually. Venerables were usually used as trump cards and were the pillars of a large clan. In the Shuemu heaven, there were many supremacies on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. The number of supremacies in the two royal cities could not be less than that of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. This meant that the number of venerables was at least more than 200. The one who had summoned Han Fei was the Seahorse Venerable. After Han Fei entered his palace, he slowly raised his eyes. "You seem to have improved a lot. This time, his position on the prodigy roll should be secured. Within a short period of time, no one will be able to shake it. It all depends on when you undergo tribulation." Han Fei responded respectfully, "This time, I may be able to reach a higher position." "Oh." The Seahorse Highness opened his eyes slightly, but he did not pay much attention to it. How did the Ichthyosaur King grow? It had little to do with him. Since the Fish Dragon King chose the Ice God Gorge for this trial, it could be regarded as a friend of the Ice God Gorge in some ways. Besides, these venerables did not stay in the Ice God Gorge all the time. They would return to the royal city and other battlefields. However, the strong also had their own selfish motives. The Fish Dragon King could not possibly have too much of a relationship with them. However, Yu Keiling and Lan Shui had survived the Thousand Mountain ancient realm and were once the Fish Dragon King's subordinates. Their talents were obviously not weak. Although they were not comparable to the Fish Dragon King, if he could train them, he had plenty of ways to subdue them. He said, "Dragon King, the Ice God Gorge also did its best to support you this time. You know that the royal city has always been strict in recruiting people. Yu Keiling and Lan Shui may not be able to become venerables, but as long as they don't die, they will definitely become half-venerables. If they want to go to the royal city, it's best to have someone in the city, except for the suggestion of a venerable. Otherwise, they won't even know how they died. Since you have karma, you don't have to worry about this matter." Han Fei sneered in his heart. How can a venerable be so kind? Why would he want to chat with me? Sure enough, they all have their own purposes. If they want to train talents, they need someone to support them. After all, when a venerable is outside, they can't interfere with the affairs of the royal city. Besides, how many sea clans in the royal city don't have any trump cards? It's said that the royal city is difficult to go to, so it must be really difficult. Even a venerable has to go through the back door, which shows how difficult it is to go to the royal city. However, this was just a small favor. There is no need for me to provoke a venerable now. If this venerable hates me and sees something wrong with me, it will be bad. So, Han Fei looked indifferent, as if he didn't take it seriously at all. It's just a piece of cake. This time, after returning to the royal city, just let them go to the royal city. The seahorse venerable smiled slightly. They are your subordinates. Why don't you let them continue to guard you and take care of you? Han Fei thought to himself, how can I take care of them? Han Fei shook his head slightly. No, this trip to the Thousand Mountain ancient realm made me realize that there are many strong masters. The woman from the Shuemu heaven and the blood demon who ambushed me in the Blood Sea Divine Wood City are all very strong. I still lack experience. I plan to go all the way back to the royal city. The seahorse venerable was slightly surprised. Are you going to swim back in person? Han Fei said, with Gue Sanqing following me, there shouldn't be any big problems. The seahorse venerable thought for a moment. That's true. There are also powerful creatures in the outer sea, but the real powerful creatures are not here. With Gue Sanqing's protection, it shouldn't be a big problem to return to the royal city. However, Yu Keiling and Lan Shui couldn't follow him. Whether it was dangerous or not depended on the person. For Han Fei, it was indeed not dangerous, but for these two people, it might be very dangerous. So, the seahorse venerable nodded slightly. That's good. When you return to the royal city, I will arrange for someone to send them to you. After the trip to the Thousand Mountain ancient realm, Yu Keiling and Lan Shui both came out alive, and the two became good sisters. At this moment, in Yu Keiling's cave residence, Lan Shui said, Sister Keiling, are we really going to go with the Fish Dragon King? This person is very ruthless, and will he really be our support? Yu Keiling's eyes were firm. Shui, we have to rely on ourselves. When we reach the royal city, we need to find a way to show our talents, in any aspect. If the Fish Dragon King is really not good enough, we have to find a way to find another master. Anyway, as long as we survive and become stronger, the situation will change one day. However, Yu Keiling was still a little worried and asked in a low voice, Shui, is the Fish Dragon King wretched? Lan Shui gritted her teeth. Just like him, he's quite domineering. Yu Keiling, just when the two girls were worrying, a venerable suddenly said to them, okay, you two don't need to follow the Fish Dragon King right now. This guy is going to swim back to the White Shell Royal City from the Ice God Gorge to gain experience. It's a good thing for you. Otherwise, you will probably die. When he returns to the Royal City, I will arrange for you to go with him. Both of them were shocked and quickly said, thank you, my lord. A moment later, they looked at each other and were both relieved. They didn't have to go with Han Fei, at least they didn't have to worry about Han Fei making inappropriate demands. Although they still couldn't control themselves in the royal city, they could avoid him for as long as possible. Lan Shuer was relieved. Fortunately, by the time he returns from his journey, he'll probably have forgotten about us long ago. His situation in the royal city isn't good either. He won't have time to care about us then. Yu Keiling slightly nodded. I'm just a little surprised. This guy is indeed arrogant. He wants to swim back to the royal city. Lan Shuer said with a smile, that's not a big deal. No matter how weak this guy is, he is still an expert who ranks 10th on the heavenly talent roll. Besides, he should have made some progress this time. However, I'm a little surprised. He seems to be more domineering and aggressive than before he entered the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. Yu Keiling tilted her head and said, you think so too? I think so too. Especially when he came out of the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, he was too aggressive. He was much more aggressive than when he went in, as if he were a different person. Han Fei didn't know that two women were studying him at this moment. Mainly, he felt that the Fish Dragon King had too little contact with Yu Keiling and Lan Shuer. In just a day's time, they had basically no contact with each other. When Han Fei was about to leave the Ice God Gorge, he suddenly met the half-mermaid Venerable at the gate. At this moment, the Venerable was looking into the distance, and Han Fei didn't know what it was looking at. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Is it waiting for me? Why? The half-mermaid Venerable looked back at Han Fei. Dragon King, have you seen Yuan Dao since you came out? Han Fei frowned slightly and even said in confusion, I haven't seen Mr. Wen Dao since I came out. Huh? Hasn't Mr. Wen Dao been waiting outside the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm? The half-mermaid Venerable shook its head slightly. He went out to cultivate halfway. I thought he would return before you left. I didn't expect that he wouldn't come back yet. Han Fei said respectfully, I'm going back to the royal city. When Mr. Wen Dao returns, you can find me on the way. Han Fei thought to himself, Fish Wen Dao. You won't be able to see Fish Wen Dao for the rest of your life. The half-mermaid Venerable nodded slightly. Okay. That's good. Go. The third chapter. I'm busy with chores. The main plot will come soon. 1 or 2 days, end of this chapter. Chapter 1265. Thanks to the identity of the Fish Dragon King, Han Fei was not stopped when he came and went. Besides, with Gue Sanqing following him, no one would think there would be any problem. Unless Heavenly Venerable Water would sneaked over, the Fish Dragon King's safety wouldn't be a big problem, so no one would be particularly concerned about him. After all, it didn't make sense for everyone to be vigilant at all times. Even their own family members needed to be on guard. This time, Han Fei finally didn't return to the Fire Spring. The direction of the royal city was to the east of the Dark War Port. In the north, Han Fei took a slight detour, but the whole distance was no more than 5 million kilometers. At a moderate speed, it took Han Fei a full day to come 200,000 kilometers away from the Ice God Gorge. This was mainly to prevent someone from secretly observing him, so he walked very slowly. From time to time, when he walked, he would occasionally fight a few battles. 1 day later, Han Fei exclaimed, Phew! I'm finally out of the range of those venerables. Ha ha ha, old Yuan, this is our world now. While talking, Han Fei issued an order in his mind, and Little Black, Little White, and Little Fatty appeared in the water. At this moment, Little Fatty had improved by 1 level compared to 2 days ago, which should be the effect of swallowing the Spirit Awakening fluid. Not surprisingly, the little bit of Spirit Awakening fluid left, plus the blood of the virtual white octopus, could at least improve Little Fatty by 1 level. Han Fei said, Little Fatty, I'll give you a month to travel 1,000,000 kilometers to the west. If anything happens, you have to rely on yourself. Little Fatty glanced at Han Fei with its 2 big eyes, pushed its tentacles, and rushed to the bottom of the sea. Little Black and Little White had already surrounded Han Fei. Little Black was still as lively as before, and he directly drilled to the bottom of the sea. In less than 2 minutes, Han Fei saw him bite a crab to pieces on the bottom of the sea. As for Little White, when it approached him, Han Fei felt a little cold. It seemed that Little White had changed a lot after swallowing the blue sea ice sand. Han Fei couldn't help touching Little White's cold head and said, "Good girl, your daddy is also going to cultivate now. You and Little Black grow up quickly. Along the way, the great responsibility of finding treasures will be handed over to you." Little White kissed Han Fei's cheek affectionately, and then with a swish, it jumped out and swam to the bottom of the sea. That was because Whitey was no longer the Whitey from before. It was not something that just anyone could approach. Han Fei saw a blood eel try to rush at Little White, but when it was within 100 meters of Little White, its body suddenly stiffened and then quickly froze. Whitey opened its mouth, and a ball of blue divine soul was forcefully swallowed by Whitey. Seeing this scene, Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. Is the effect of natural spiritual treasures so great? Whitey, who had never fought before, might not be fighting now, but its strength was already terrifying. Little White and Little Black, as long as one of them didn't die, they wouldn't die. Therefore, Han Fei was quite relieved now. After all, according to Elder Yuan, spiritual beasts and contractual spiritual beasts all needed to be trained. If you keep them in a greenhouse and feed them from time to time, it is equivalent to killing their potential in disguise. The old turtle next to Han Fei said, "Woo! Only 1,000,000 kilometers in a month?" Han Fei grinned and said, "So what? I originally planned to go back to the capital while training. They should be notified to go back. During this period, we should take advantage of it to improve our strength." To be honest, Han Fei was indeed a little poor now. Although he still had 800 or 900 million points of spiritual energy, he couldn't use it much. He could also take advantage of this period to plunder the secret realms along the way. The old turtle said, "That's good. I am dredging the hidden diseases of this body and the impurities in the demonic veins. This process will take about 2 or 3 months. At that time, I will create a heavenly talent body." Han Fei grinned. "You've decided on this turtle? It's already so old." The old turtle said disdainfully, "Turtles have a long lifespan. However, 2 months later, you need to give me another apocalyptic divine technique. This time, I don't need much, just 50 years. Han Fei curled his lips. "Why do you need it again?" The old turtle said, "After all, this body is too weak, and there are still many hidden dangers that you didn't cure last time. Besides, my strength has been improved again. As long as you give me a little time, there are few semi-venerables who can rival me, which will be good for you." Han Fei waved his hand and said, "Then let's talk about it in 2 months. 1 month later. In the boundless sea, in an undersea jungle, under a decayed old tree, a large number of roots stretched out of the soil, and a tree man drilled out. At the moment the tree man came out, holes were drilled in the void, and Earth 9, Water Luster, Punishing Knife, and the Fire Seed appeared one after another. In the end, Han Fei slowly crawled out of the hole, looking calm. This place must have been looted 100 years ago. There are only 20,000 caddies of spiritual spring, and everything else has decayed. Forget it, let's go to the next place." The Fire Seed slightly complained, "Master, summon me to a place with fire. I'm really not used to this environment." Han Fei was speechless. "This is the sea. Where can I find a place with fire except for undersea volcanoes?" Water Luster sneered. "You can only blame yourself for giving birth to the wrong species." The Fire Seed said angrily, "If I swallow a volcano, it will take you 100 years of cultivation." Water Luster and the others all fled, too lazy to listen to it. They thought to themselves, since when did the Fire Seed start to brag? Han Fei scanned with his senses, only to find that the old turtle was cultivating on a reef 1,000 kilometers away. As for Little Fatty, it was fighting a big shell. It was a yellow shell with a body length of almost 18 meters, but different from regular shells, this shell was full of yellow tentacles around its opening. Han Fei had seen this kind of shell before. It was called coarse hair shell. Of course, it was called Ju Bei here. In the past month, Han Fei had seen Little Fatty and Ju Bei fight more than once. Out of instinct, octopuses might prefer clams, so they had a special fondness for shells. This coarse hair shell was a shell that Little Fatty could attack now, but it was a challenge. A large number of blooming yellow tentacles, like floating seaweed, were dancing like long whips, grabbing at Little Fatty. Little Fatty seemed to know what the shell was going to do. The suckers on its 8 tentacles were suddenly activated, and the terrifying suction force directly straightened the tentacles of the Ju Bei. Little Fatty's remaining tentacles suddenly hooked, and this guy directly pulled out a mass of soul. Then, the suckers on Little Fatty's 9 tentacles vibrated and directly sucked the soul. Chilla. The soul was torn apart, and a Ju Bei was killed by Little Fatty. After swallowing the soul, Little Fatty pulled open the Ju Bei's shell with its suckers and sucked the flesh dry. Han Fei couldn't help but shake his head. Damn it, this guy is almost a foodie. Go fight. Go challenge. How can you improve quickly if you don't fight? Although Han Fei asked Little Fatty to go out on an adventure alone, in fact, Han Fei had been following it. After all, this was his first time, and Han Fei wasn't completely sure yet. Just when Han Fei was about to go over and teach Little Fatty a lesson, the old turtle suddenly shouted, "Come back, someone is coming." Han Fei's heart did a flip. Come back. Hearing this, the punishing saber and the others quickly rushed back. Fortunately, they hadn't gone far. Otherwise, if they couldn't come back in a short time, they would be doomed. Swish. 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 The illusions of mountains and rivers were put away, Little Black and Little White disappeared into the center of his eyebrows, Little Fatty got back into his body, and the old turtle stood behind Han Fei. Han Fei grabbed the Sun Moon shell, pretending to perceive something. After about 5 minutes, Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Where is he?" The old turtle said, "I saw it from the heavenly secrets. If he is weak, I can't see it. But if he is strong, I can perceive it in advance." After another 5 minutes, with a swish, a void crack was opened on the bottom of the sea. In an instant, a half-mermaid venerable appeared in front of Han Fei. Han Fei hurriedly recalled who this person was. The old turtle's voice sounded in Han Fei's heart, Changshui Qin, venerable, responsible for the secret realm assessment of the Bai Bei royal city. Han Fei hurriedly said, "Greetings, venerable Changshui. Are you looking for me?" Changshui Qin said coldly, "Of course. The ice god Gorge said that you were going to swim back to the royal city. It's been a month. You should have arrived. Since you haven't arrived yet, I'm here to take a look." Han Fei immediately said, "Venerable Changshui, I'm training." Changshui Qin frowned slightly, looked at the traces of the secret realm not far away, and couldn't help but say, "Do you think the secret realms in the royal city are not enough for you? Or do you think the secret realms in the outer sea are stronger than those collected in the royal city?" Han Fei noticed that this venerable seemed to think that he was too slow. Besides, from his words, he could tell that this Changshui Qin didn't think highly of the secret realms in the outer sea at all. Han Fei immediately said, "The Dragon King didn't think so. It's just that on this trip to the front line, I met the 2 greatest enemies of my life. The Dragon King just wants to see how many creatures, fated chances, and treacherous dangers there are in the outer seas." Changshui Qin was slightly surprised. "Fish Dragon King, you seem to be talking too much." Han Fei's heart skipped a beat, and the old turtle also reminded him, the Fish Dragon King has always been simple. There's no need for logic. Han Fei suddenly raised his head. "Venerable, to tell you the truth, I feel that the Dragon King's bloodline is changing, and my strength is increasing rapidly. When I go back, I want to enter the top 5, so I stalled for some time outside." "Top 5? Changshui Qin was a little suspicious. "Are you bragging?" However, after hearing Han Fei's words, Changshui Qin seemed to understand something. Yes, the Fish Dragon King's 10th place had always been unstable. He heard from the ice god Gorge that the Fish Dragon King had some opportunities. He hasn't returned yet because he is digesting the opportunities. And this opportunity actually gives this kid the confidence to enter the top 5? It seems that this opportunity is not small. No wonder this kid hasn't returned yet. Chang Shui-chin couldn't help but ask, how long? Give me a time. I will arrange a secret realm assessment for you according to the time you have wasted. The longer you delay, the more difficult the secret realm assessment will be. You have to think about it carefully. Han Fei took a deep breath. 3 months. Chang Shui-chin's eyes narrowed slightly. You sure are arrogant. Okay, I will wait for you in the royal city. With that, Chang Shui-chin tore the void and stepped into the air. From beginning to end, he didn't even look at Gue Sanqing, who was played by the old turtle. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1266. After Chang Shui-chin left, the old turtle immediately cursed, although you didn't learn the mind-manipulating technique, didn't you read the Fish Dragon King's divine soul? Han Fei smiled bitterly. I did. But isn't it only something important that can be read? The old turtle said, your soul-sucking technique is not good enough. A true soul catcher would be able to read all the information you wanted, as if you were repeating someone else's memory. This empress had always thought that you were unwilling to accept the soul search because you were confident in your soul search ability. In the end, you couldn't have been guarding against this empress, right? Han Fei pretended not to hear it and asked in a daze, complete reading? The kind that can read every detail of his life? Suddenly, Han Fei secretly took a breath. He seemed to have neglected something. Was the mind manipulating really that powerful? He could even see every single detail in the other party's memories. In the past, the void lines could read some memories, so Han Fei thought that this was the soul catcher. After all, these were all methods of reading other people's memories, not experiencing their entire lives. At this moment, Han Fei couldn't help but ask, is the soul manipulating technique really so powerful? The old turtle was speechless. I'll impart it to you first and imprint it into your mind. See for yourself. It's up to you whether you want to learn it or not, but don't be like what happened this time. Even recognizing a person took a lot of effort, and you even needed this emperor to remind you. After a while, a new technique emerged in Han Fei's mind. Mind manipulating, venerable level, low quality, introduction. This is a forbidden technique that goes against the heavenly Tao. It forcefully steals the souls of others to observe. Deduction, soul-searching spell, deduction consumption, 1 billion drawback 1. If the soul catcher's strength is higher than the soul catcher's, it will easily backfire. Drawback 2. When using the mind-manipulating technique to read memories, it is easy to be impacted by the soul catcher's memory, affecting one's own soul memory. Drawback 3. Forcibly captivating the soul can easily cause the soul of the captive to become confused and become stupid. Seeing this technique, Han Fei slightly gasped. Is this against the law of nature? The old tortoise said disdainfully, what do you mean by going against the heavenly law? Cultivation is already going against the heavenly Tao, so why care about soul devouring? Han Fei didn't really care. However, the mind manipulating could be deduced. Since the soul-searching art was a level higher than the mind-manipulating art, the side effects should be much smaller. However, Han Fei did not choose to deduce it. For him now, 1 billion points of aura was a huge number. Over the past month, he hadn't just been exploring secret realms and searching for treasures. Han Fei also needed to consume a lot of spiritual energy. He had even fed Little White 100 million points of spiritual energy, which he had saved for Little White. Moreover, who knew what would happen if they went to Royal City? Therefore, although he still had enough spiritual spring on him, it was not worth it to deduce it all at once. This is not. One day later, Han Fei appeared in Forge the Universe again. When the Fish Dragon King saw Han Fei, he gritted his teeth and said, "How long are you going to keep me here?" Han Fei smiled. "Don't worry. It won't be long. 3 years at most." The Fish Dragon King heaved a sigh of relief when he heard that it had been 3 years. He asked, then why are you here? Han Fei smiled. Nothing. I just want to borrow your memory. The Fish Dragon King. Before the Fish Dragon King could react, Han Fei had already pressed his hand on the Fish Dragon King's head. Poor Fish Dragon King, its strength was basically abolished, and this world was imprisoned. The space it was in was divided independently by Han Fei. There wasn't even the slightest bit of spiritual energy, let alone recovery. The Fish Dragon King, who had lost its strength, became a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered by Han Fei. Han Fei wanted to practice the soul-manipulating technique on the Fish Dragon King because the Fish Dragon King's realm was not as high as his, its strength was not as strong as his, and its soul was also weaker than his. If even with such an advantage, there would be side effects, then whether he would need to use this soul-manipulating technique in the future would become a problem. With his personality, he probably wouldn't choose to use it. He only felt that his consciousness was immersed in a sea of memories. It was as if there was a void in all directions, and there were all kinds of images, all kinds of vivid content. Han Fei knew that he was just a spectator. As he scanned with his consciousness, a large number of memories flashed through his consciousness. He saw the true body of the Fish Dragon King, which turned out to be a sea snake. However, this sea snake had a background. It had 4 limbs, hind limbs, 4 feet, and 2 horns on its head. However, this was not a dragon, but a snake-like creature. Han Fei directly ignored the memories of the Fish Dragon King before it was awakened. He found that memories could be skipped. In an instant, Han Fei skipped to the time when the Fish Dragon King was taken into the royal city. Someone he knew, a heavenly talent of the same realm, the Fish Dragon King was bullied. That was the strength that he gained step by step and experienced many life and death situations. All kinds of information popped up in his head almost at the same time. After getting the known information, Han Fei's consciousness returned to his body. Who? Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes and let out a long breath. Before Han Fei could do anything, he saw the Fish Dragon King's eyes began to roll back, foam at the mouth, and convulse all over. Han Fei was speechless. Wait. What's going on? He's a heavenly talent after all. Why is he like this? The old turtle's voice sounded. Maybe he's been disabled for a while. He's in a bad state now, so he's like this. Han Fei immediately said, no, this guy can't die or go crazy. I have to save him. With that, Han Fei threw a holy light technique over, and the Fish Dragon King stopped convulsing. Its complexion was getting better at a speed visible to the naked eye. Han Fei now surpassed the Fish Dragon King in both realm and strength. With a holy light technique, even the vitality of the 9-headed snake grass could recover crazily, let alone the Fish Dragon King. About 10 minutes later, the Fish Dragon King came back to its senses. About 10 minutes later, the Fish Dragon King felt that its internal injuries had recovered by a small half. When the soft healing light disappeared, the Fish Dragon King felt that its strength had recovered by at least 20%. The Fish Dragon King was surprised. What did you do to me just now? Han Fei frowned and said, before I agree to let you go, I won't allow you to have any strength. With that, Han Fei raised his knife and pierced the Fish Dragon King's dantian again. You. The Fish Dragon King vomited a mouthful of blood and said in a trembling voice, since you don't allow me to have strength, why did you heal me? Han Fei was silent for a while. I overdid it. The Fish Dragon King, coming out of Forge the Universe, Han Fei took a deep breath. It seems that I missed a lot of information. Old Turtle, how long did it take me to search your soul just now? The old turtle said, 3 minutes. Huh? Han Fei couldn't help but be stunned. Just 3 minutes? The old turtle said, of course, that's your consciousness observing. Maybe you think a long time has passed, but in fact, it's only 3 minutes. It's like a dream. You think you've had a long dream, but in fact, it hasn't been long. Han Fei thought about it and nodded. In the reincarnation, he had spent decades. Wasn't it only a few dozen days? However, it seemed to be quite worthwhile to cultivate in such a dreamland. Han Fei couldn't help but say, "I said I'll go back in 3 months. Isn't that a bit too long?" After reading the Fish Dragon King's memory, Han Fei finally knew the distribution of the capital. First of all, the permanent population of the capital had never exceeded 100,000 people. Among them, 70% of the residents were only level 6. Therefore, every expert with a demonic heritage above the 7th level would have at least 1 or 2 followers. And there were also standards to survive in the capital. First of all, the 70% were experts with level 6 demonic heritage, which was about 70,000 people. If these people didn't follow someone, it was fine. Unless their followers asked them in person, they had to go on an adventure every other month. And this adventure had a probability of death. Almost every adventure, nearly 1% of the people would die. This was not a simple number. It was a level 6 demonic heritage. No matter where he was, he could be called a heavenly prodigy. But in the capital, they had to work hard to ensure that they didn't die. This meant that every month, about 700 sea demons would die. In 1 year, more than 8,000 people died. This number could be described as terrifying. They were all powerhouses in the sea spirit realm. It wasn't a boast, but the people who were eliminated by Royal City every year would be a terrifying force to be reckoned with if they were thrown out into battle. However, it was also because of this high elimination rate that every level 6 heavenly talent who entered the capital worked hard to grow. Therefore, there were many Dao seekers in the capital. All the Dao-seeking realm powerhouses added up took up about 25% of the total number of people. The remaining 5% included venerables, mermaids, sea beasts, and other creatures. And among the 25%, 15% were ordinary heavenly talents with level 6 demonic heritage. Those with level 7 demonic heritage or above were only 10%. But even if it was only 10%, there were still 10,000 people. What a frightening number it was. Han Fei clicked his tongue. Back then, Tang Ji's level 7 spiritual heritage was enough to make the Heavenly Sword sect come to welcome him in person, and he had already become one of the few powerhouses of his generation in the Thousand-Star City. And among the people he had met so far, few had a spiritual heritage above level 7. Of course, spiritual heritage with growth potential didn't count. Those were heavenly talents that the Thug Academy had tried every means to dig out, so they couldn't be measured by common sense. And this was only the number of people in the capital. Like those ordinary heavenly talents, even the Fish Dragon King and the others had to participate in secret realm trials regularly. But different from ordinary people, these heavenly talents with level 7 demonic heritage or above had preferential treatment. In some secret realms, there would be special personnel to rescue them, which greatly reduced the probability of death. However, reducing the probability of death and not dying were two different things. Some people were unlucky and couldn't be rescued in time, so they could only blame it on their bad luck. And the secret realms of the capital were divided into levels. According to the different degrees of difficulty, they were divided into 5 levels: easy, ordinary, hard, purgatory, and forbidden. If you were an ordinary heavenly talent, you could choose easy once a month. For a heavenly talent like the Fish Dragon King, you usually chose hard, and no one would start from ordinary. With the pride of the Fish Dragon King, it was even more impossible. However, if a heavenly talent with level 7 demonic heritage or above didn't participate in a trial for a month, the difficulty of the next trial would automatically increase by 1 level. Therefore, Han Fei had already spent a month. Now, he told Chengxuqin that he would go back in 3 months. Didn't this mean that the difficulty of his trial had suddenly jumped to the level of a forbidden area? In Han Fei's mind, he also read some information about the level of a forbidden area. It seemed that heavenly talents with level 9 spiritual heritage or below had only a 10% chance of survival, which was really a narrow escape. Why was it below level 9 spiritual heritage? Because those with level 9 spiritual heritage or above rarely appeared in 1,000 years. If there was one, it would be a treasure. And who would throw such a treasure into the difficulty of a forbidden area? The old turtle said leisurely, just now, I thought you knew. Han Fei, second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter.